Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. How y'all doing tonight? And tonight I have a super special guest. This is a gentleman that for at least 15 years, he's living in a very well-known haunted house on Cielo Drive. And I'm talking about David Oman. I'm sure many of you at some point have seen, not once, but many times, different shows that they've done about the house that is replete with paranormal occurrences. So how are you doing tonight, David?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Marlene?
Good. And I know, like we were talking before that you've been there for 15 years, and I know a lot of people have probably seen a lot of the different shows that you've appeared on throughout the years. But if you could give like a real quick background, David, as to how you ended up where you're at right now.
Let's see. Well, about 20 years ago now, a little less than, my father called me up on a Sunday morning and said, I found something. I said, you found what, Dad? It's 8 o'clock in the morning. Were you serious? He goes, yeah, I found a lot. It's like, great, Dad. Can I wait? He goes, no. He goes, I want you to get up and meet me there. It's like, all right, yeah, okay, what? Yeah. He goes, look, it's up in Beverly Hills, up Benedict Canyon. I'm going, yeah. He goes, it's $40,000. And I was like, my eyes popped. I'm going, what that? What?
I was about to say, Dad, it's a pretty good price.
I was in shock. I was like dumbstruck, saying, Dad, did I hear you correctly? You said $40,000. He goes, yeah, it's a foreclosure. I said, what? It's in Beverly Hills, a foreclosure up Benedict Canyon. I said, what? Is it a freaking vertical slope? Said,
you were thinking, like, what am I going to find when I get out there?
Exactly. $40,000. Really? What is it? Is it a foot by a foot on prime real estate on Rodeo Drive? I said, what are you talking about? Foot? Yeah, that's more like an inch by an inch in Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive. I said, what do you mean it's in Benedict Canyon, $40,000? And it's. I said, okay, fine. I said, all right, you got my attention. I said, maybe it's a misprint. He goes, I don't know. I'm sure it's not a misprint. I said, oh, yeah, sure, Dad. Maybe it's $400,000, and one of the zeros was omitted from the print in the LA Times, and it's really $400,000 for this lot.
Yeah, when you get out there, oops, we left out one of the zeros.
Yeah, exactly. It says it says 40K. I said, Dad, it could have said 4. One of the zeros could have been omitted. I'm thinking about this, going. So fine. So I said, all right, give me the address. And he says, da-da-da-da, Cielo Drive. And I'm not, awake completely. And I'm not thinking. And then again, Cielo Drive, somebody mentioning Cielo Drive in 1998, in November, literally, it's 19 years ago about now. This coming weekend, it was like mid to late November, early December of 98. And I'm like, all right. I'm not thinking about, Sharon Tate and all this and that. So I go up there, and I get up to the driveway, and I get up to the lot, and I'm like, oh, my God. That's where the Sharon Tate murders took place. And it's like instinctively like, bam, I know this place. And I'm thinking, I haven't been here in about 20 years since high school. And I'm thinking, how did I end up getting up here when I spent so many times on my own? After high school, trying to find this street, and I could never find this street to save my soul. And after you come up here a couple times, it's a process of elimination. There's literally 3 private drives on this side of the street, and that's it. And then it goes at the end of the street. It branches off into 2 other streets. So I, to this day, still think to myself, how couldn't I figure out where the hell it was? And I couldn't figure out between 3 little streets that go up off this main street. I wouldn't drive up far enough to go all the way up to find out what the end of the street was because I was scared.
Right.
So when I'm looking there going, my dad drives up and I'm thinking, I can't believe it. I said, there's the Sharon Tate house. And I'm all thinking about that and reminiscing in my brain about the past and, the things that I remember as a kid going up here. And I keep on saying, Dad, that's a shame. He goes, I don't care, because you're here to look at this lot.
Right. He's like, forget it. He's just thinking, we're going to get a lot for $40,000. Who cares?
Yeah, he's not in this moment of reminiscing and nostalgia and saying, God, I haven't been here. So, and what the irony is, he's like, what are you? It's 9 in the freaking. It's 8:30 in the morning. What are you giving me shit about the freaking Sharon Tate murders? Took place some 30 years earlier. Cares less because I'm here to look at this piece of real estate. I'm a
Uh-huh.
realtor. I'm a broker. What the hell you think? So I'm like, and I'm looking down. I'm going. I'm seeing the slope, and it's a good. It's probably about 40. Maybe it's like 45. Yeah, it's probably about 45-degree angle, and I'm going. I was right, Dad. It's almost a vertical slope. And he gives me this look like, and he goes, "Don't be funny." He goes, "You," because my dad was a punster. Dad used to play puns, and I'm like thinking, "Oh, my chance to make a little commentary about this house," which wasn't a pun. It was like, "Gee, Dad, it is a 45-degree slope." And he's like, "Don't give me that." He goes, I said, "But then again, my dad goes, I built a lot of houses, David, and I like buying lots that are quote unquote difficult to build on lots." As he used to call them, problem lots. He says, "You know why? Because they're less expensive. It dissuades a lot of people. It requires a certain amount of dexterity and a certain amount of creativity and
Right.
a certain
Sure.
amount it's a challenge." And he goes, "I like the chance of this because people don't want to touch these lots." And he goes, "And me?" He goes, "I like the opportunity of doing it."
So he was a perfect
That's
buyer.
I think it's more interesting. It's like he goes, "The fact that I can get it for a song, I can do something with it." He goes, "It's kind of like it's the opportunity that presents itself." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, that's true, Dad." I said, "I know for a fact because as a kid, um, I used to go with him on, as we say, on job sites
Right.
because he was a builder, architect, designer, and also real estate investor. And he had, as in my lifetime, he built a duplex over, ironically enough, on a street called Roble Vista. No. Roble Vista, Sierra. Yeah, it was Roble Vista. And what's interesting about this duplex that he built is it's built onto the side of a mountain, an upslope, where
Wow.
literally you are looking up 30 feet to where the apartment, the duplexes are, and you have to
Wow.
take stairs to literally go like this and all. And I'm like, when I was a kid, I used to go there because it was the first place that he built in LA that he and my mom lived in, and they still maintained it and owned it, and they rented it out.
Okay.
And it was like I remember going there as a kid, going, I looked at the lot next door. It was like this. The lot next door. Here's the curb, 2 feet in, and then it's straight mountain, going straight up about 40 feet straight up. And I mean, it's
Wow.
not dirt; it's hard, solid mountain rock, like granite. And I'm like going, and that's what the lot that he built on some in 1952 or something, long before I was born. This duplex, and I remember as a kid going, and then he built the house on Sierra Mar over in off of Sunset Boulevard in Doheny that he had bought in the 50s. Again, this one wasn't an upslope. This one was a downslope. And literally, as I remember, because the lot remained there till he was about 15 years old when he started building that
So he
house.
had experience in this type of architecture. And you know what? I'm trying to envision
Absolutely,
this
it's
because
even
remember,
more
here in
scary
Florida,
than
everything is
this stuff.
flat.
Literally, you had 2 feet of this was like 110-foot long lot on the street frontage, and it had maybe a foot of flat, and then it went down just like
Wow.
wow, that's a pretty steep. He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to build on this." I said, "You're going to build what on this, Dad?" And he designed this house. It was about a 90-foot long house that was about 30 feet deep. That was it. So it was pretty narrow, maybe 25 feet deep. It was a pretty narrow, house, but it took advantage of the entire the frontage, and he built this large house on 3 levels. And he goes, "That's what we're going to do on your place." And so that's what he designed here. So to my father's idea of this, it was an opportunity and a half. It was cheap.
Okay.
It a steal, as he said. He says, if we can steal this and build the house here, kind of like what I built on Sierra Mar, this will be terrific. A dream of mine to build a house with my father. Since I'd been on all these different job sites as a kid, and the house that I grew up in, he built literally, and I was born right into it. I want the same. I want to do that with Dad too, except I want to be really involved in it and actually on the site, pounding nails, putting in studs and doing whatever had to be done around the property and the construction. So that my mom said, because no, David, if you build this house, it's not going to be flipped. This will be your house. This will be kind of like your legacy, you know. And I said, fine. So I literally spent 3.5 years with my dad and
Okay.
the contractor on this house building on this site, building the house.
Wow. Okay, so this was, yeah. So you kind of put all your input along with your dad and you got this house going. And so, David, wasn't it
Yeah.
during that time that when the house was being built that you first noticed or somebody approached you about things that they couldn't explain or
Oh yeah. Actually, from the time when we first bought the lot, and how should we say, shortly after I bought the lot, one of my dear pets, one of my first pets that I owned as an adult, passed away, Arthur. So I knew that I was going to be building up here, and I knew in the back of my head that this was going to be in my family and with me for a long time, the lot and the house. And
right?
I decided that I wanted to inter his remains on the side of the hill.
Okay.
Well, I got my friend Sean to come over here and give me a hand. And as I recall, we were about 10 feet down the side of the hill, and we dug the grave. And I remember saying to him, I said, Sean, I said, it feels kind of strange. I said, I don't feel like we're alone. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, as I'm sitting here putting Arthur into the ground, I said, I feel like I've got a whole group of mourners standing around us. And we're on the side of the hills, 10 feet down from the driveway. And I'll never forget, I said, I just feel like we're not alone. We have company. I said, I just feel like there's a lot of people here that are here with us as a
Wow.
mourning gathering to help put him into the ground. And he goes, you know, St. David? He goes, I kind of feel something like that too. And I said, you know, I don't have any problem with that. It's not. It just feels like they're here to send him off. And then during construction, I remember vividly walking around on the site, and you know, we had 6 laborers working, doing the stuff, doing the actual, you know, helping along with the construction here. And it wouldn't be uncommon for them to come up behind, you know, come downstairs and come up behind me and say, David, because, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where the head? And so there were several times on points when I would be here and I'd like feel like somebody was behind me. And I said, yeah, Hector. Hector? He goes, yeah, what? From upstairs. I'm going, you know, he goes, no, what are you talking about? I said, nothing. And
Wow.
then, I mean, it just happened enough times that I was like, well, no, I just knew. And it's nothing, it wasn't anything, oh, it's leering or it's threatening. God forbid, people in the way they perceive things. It didn't feel anything more than just, we're here, we're just checking up to watch what's. It almost reminded me of like what my father and I would be doing when we were coming by the job site to see how construction was going. It was the same kind of vibe. It wasn't threatening. It was just like, okay, what's going
Right.
on? How are things going? All right, that's good. Keep it up. And what's interesting is 6 months before we were done, at about the time when the house was done and the walls were up and the drywall was up and we were already done with the basic construction. Now we're going to this, as my mom would say it, or used to say, that's the easy part. I said, why? She
Right.
goes, put the walls up and stuff. That's Mickey Mouse. I said, why? She goes, the real tough job is, and I'll never forget getting her saying this. She goes, it's the finishing parts. I said, what do you mean that stuff? And we were picking the fixtures, etc. So I said to the guys, I said, look, you guys, we're almost done with your side of the construction. I said, I got to ask you, have any of you guys had any strange, weird things happen to you in the past?
What you asked us at the end, just in case in the middle of all this work, they
That you
said,
are
we're
totally,
out of here.
you know, yeah, because I figured, I said, no, something was just like, look, I know that, see, I'm really logical and methodical about certain things. And when it comes to laying out an idea or a story, or doing, I should say, doing investigative research, because I was an ex-PI. I used to do private investigations in my earlier years, and at a company that did that. And I said, you know, I have an opportunity to interview these people
Right.
now.
Yes, exactly.
They won't be able to be gotten to when they no longer are here in 6 months or a
Yes.
year or 2 years or 3 years. And I'm thinking, you know something? I have an opportunity to interview these people right now, and these people are a perfect, what is it called again? A representation of people that you just don't get a chance to interview. And what I'm saying is, these people were a perfect group of there's a perfect group of test subjects to question. They're all Latin. They're all
Mm-hmm.
from Central America. They all don't know anything, are no older than 24 years old.
Okay.
So go back to 2000, year 2001, and go back 24 years in the year 1977. They
Wow.
didn't think they were born. They didn't know anything. They were perfect test subjects to inquire these questions with, because they didn't know anything about it, her murders or anything. They didn't know anything about the house at the end of the drive. They didn't know anything about the history of the area. They're perfect to ask. They're basically virgins in the sense that
Right.
they're pretty much blank. You would call them as blank blackboards, chalkboards. They had nothing on them as far as the knowledge thereof to
Exactly.
affect their connection to what happened here. It's totally unique in a dynamic sense of the word. So I said to them, I said, hey, if you guys have any weird experiences here in the past 2.5 years, been working here.
And
One guy says, yeah. And this guy is he's like 23 years old, 20. And we had guys there. We had a kid that was 16 years old. His father was working, was doing the iron work and stuff on the house and creating it stuff. And so he was there during the summertime. So I'm talking to these guys in late December as we're wrapping up. And I said, hey, you're here too. Good. I said, perfect. They got all 5, 6 of you guys that have been here on and off for the past 2 years. I said,
okay.
tell me, what has happened? And one guy goes, yeah. And he says to me, about 6 months ago, in the middle of summer, in mid-July, he's here on the 3rd floor, 6 p.m., and he's all by himself. Last guy to be here, and he's downstairs on the 3rd level working, and he's doing some finished work, and he hears voices and footsteps coming from the top floor, 2 floors above.
Wow.
And at the time, the 3rd floor was kind of like this. There's the huge 8-foot by 8-foot wide stairwell, and
Uh-huh.
then you've got 30-foot wide iron spiral staircase, and at the time it only had wood planks on it.
Wow.
And at the bottom, you come down the landing and it opens. It's 8 foot across and 12 foot high is the entryway into the theater room, which would then become the theater room. At the time, it was just the 3rd level room at the bottom,
Right.
and then the bedroom next door to it. So sounds from the top floor would come, literally to this day, come straight down. You can hear people talking on the top floor at the bottom floor like nobody's business. It's as
Wow.
clear as a bell. So I ended up putting a pony wall that's a 4-foot wall that comes down from the ceiling, and then put a pair of doors there to cut off that. Because at the time he was there, it was all open, and I since have cut that all thing down and made it closed. Because for that reason, I didn't want people downstairs being bothered by the people upstairs, and vice versa.
Oh my God, I
So
can't believe it.
that's not why I did this. But so back to the story. So he's down there working. He hears the voices and footsteps. So he comes running upstairs, and he says he gets to the top floor, and he looks around, and he goes, "There's no one there."
Oh
Now at that
boy.
time, the dry walls were all up. All the floors were all plywood. The balconies were plywood. They weren't finished. The decks hadn't been done on that. So it was pretty much just still very roughed out. And in some of the rooms, the tiles were put in some of the bathrooms, but not all of them, including, again, the master bathroom. And I sat there, and he says, so I go look upstairs. There's no one there. I go out on the driveway, look up the driveway, look down the driveway. There's not a car, and there's nobody out. So he said, okay. He didn't quite understand what the hell he was hearing. So he went back downstairs, and he started working. He says 5 minutes later, boom, voices and footsteps from the top floor.
Wow.
So he then runs upstairs again, goes through the whole entire same thing. He looks at the top floor, nothing. Looks at the outside, nothing. Goes to the second floor, looks on the second floor, sees somebody's playing with him. Says, no one there. Says, that's it. He goes back downstairs and he starts packing his bags in the guest bedroom. And he says, all of a sudden, about a couple of minutes later, he starts to hear footsteps coming down the staircase, getting louder and louder.
Oh my God!
He's in what's now the theater room. He's not in the guest bedroom at all, as I just remembered. He was in the theater room, so he hears these footsteps coming down the staircase, and he says this. He said it's like it wasn't tennis shoes. He said it was like hard leather hitting the wood. Planks.
So he could distinguish what type of footstep or whatever the person was wearing.
It's loud and clear. He says, because he goes, he knows when I was coming up and down the footsteps, they could hear me. They knew it was me. Tennis shoes, and they go pop, 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 pop.
Right.
He goes, these really distinct. They were hard, like boom, boom, boom. And he says they weren't because some of the guys were wearing, contractors wearing, some of the guys wearing contractors' boots, these heavy, workers' boots. Yes. He goes, it didn't sound anything. It just sounded like, he says, it sounded like your father's, because my father wore, gosh darn, sometimes would wear these leather-soled loafers. Mm-hmm. And it was that, he says, that kind of sound, it was like that side sound. And so I'm thinking, yeah, it sounded like my, it was like leather on wood. It was very, very clearly distinct, boom, 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 coming down. And he goes, all he says is they're getting louder and louder. And he then decided to get into the other room, so he wouldn't be in the middle of the gosh darn theater room when somebody comes down. He wanted to hide away and get into the other room. So there was no door on the doorway. It was just an open door going into the guest bedroom. So he got into that room and he sat there hiding. He says they got really loud and they got to the bottom. It sounded like they got to the bottom of the staircase. So he rushes out to look and see who the hell it is, to catch them in the act and surprise them. There's no one there, he said. He goes, there's nothing the hell there.
Surprise.
And then it happens. God. No, the kicker is this. He goes, and then it happens. I said, what happens? He goes, all of a sudden he feels this 2-inch wide ice, cold breeze come across the nape of his neck, right below his hairline, and he had shorter hair, and right above his shoulder blades, across his neck, the back of it. He says the hairs on his body stood straight up, and he screamed out, "Dos míos, llame boy," and took off and didn't come back for 6 weeks. And translated from Spanish into English, a dos míos means I'm going. And then he said, a dos míos. No, so a dos míos means, oh my God. Llame boy means I'm leaving.
I bet.
So he said, a dos míos, llame boy, and took off.
I bet.
And I said, when he came back, I said, wait a second. That's when you told the other guys that you were in San Salvador taking care of your mom who was sick. And he goes, yeah. He goes, she wasn't sick. She goes, I didn't leave the country, you crazy. He said to me, he goes, I just was too terrified to come back to the house after that.
Yeah.
And then he said, then I realized later on, he goes, wait a second. I didn't get paid for the prior 3 weeks that I had been working there because I wanted to build up my check to a bigger amount. He says, yeah, I remember that. I said, I remember when you told me you were sick, that you were taking care of your sick mom. I said, because I got so tired of waiting week in and week out, when's he coming back, that I said, I took it upon myself to put in the goddamn tiles in the master bathroom. And I said to him, and he laughed, he said, because he saw them, he goes, I knew it, because I saw the way they were in there. I said, I told you that I couldn't do it. I said, I thought I could, and I thought it was so easy, because I watched you day in and day out throwing the tiles in like it was no problem.
But you know what? He probably didn't think that if he told you what he had experienced, he thought that you were going to tell him, get out of here, you're crazy.
He came back, but after that, he said, when I came back, I was the first one to leave on the job site after that every single day. I said, oh, that's it. I always remember you cutting out early. He goes, yeah, I didn't want to be there ever again alone. And what's interesting is literally a few years later after I moved in, the first incident that took place to corroborate his story.
Right.
It was, 2008. 6 years later, I'm downstairs in the theater room watching a movie with a date. And it's mid-March, and the Santa Ana winds here are howling up and down the canyon, and it's freezing cold, so I've got the windows shut. And we're watching White Chicks in the theater room, and I remember vividly what scene it was. It was during right in the middle of the movie, as a matter of fact, when they're going through their escapades, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the movie, we both started hearing some man talking. coming from upstairs, a man having a conversation with somebody. And I said, "Oh, hold on. Let me go in the other room and let me pick up the phone and figure out who's calling." So I go in the other room and I pick up the phone, and it's a dial tone. I said, "Oh, I must have missed their message."
Okay.
So I pick up the telephone that goes directs to a voicemail, the other one to call the home phone that goes to the voice machine upstairs.
Okay.
The answer machine. So I dial the number, my home number, and I go put it out to my ear, and all of a sudden I hear out of the ringtone the ringer in my ear, ring, ring. At the same time, I hear ring, ring on the phone in the room next to me. And I'm going,
huh?
I go, wait a second. I just heard the telephone ring, and I know for a fact that we think that this is a guy that's leaving a message, but I didn't hear a telephone ring before I heard this guy talking.
How does that work?
So I shake my head and I go, oh, funny. I said, oh, God. I said, okay, let me just double check a few other things before I go leaping into a conclusion of where I'm really in a pickle. So I go into the room, back to the theater room, and I say my day. I said, look, just hold on 1 second. I said, pause and leave me. I'll be right back. So I go run upstairs and I go look through the house. All the windows are closed to the outside. So we know it's not a next door neighbor. We know it's not the neighbor below me talking, that I'm hearing overbleed through the windows outside the house, them talking. I can hear everybody's voice pretty clearly. It's not that. I go pick up the answering machine, look at the answering machine. There's no telephone messages. I look at the telephone caller ID. There are no telephone calls in the past 3 hours that I've been there with this chick. I go back downstairs, and I've got this crumb in my craw, so to speak. And I'm thinking to myself, how do I deal with this? How do I make the best of the situation and figure out exactly what's going on without letting the cat out of the bag? So I go to my date, and I said, all right. She goes, what happened? She goes, can I ask you a question? She goes, yeah. I said, can you describe to me what you heard?
I was about to ask you, were you able to make out what they were saying or what he was saying?
Oh, he was having a conversation with somebody. It was clear as a bell. So I said, I know what I heard, but I didn't want to taint the waters and tell her what I heard before I asked her. Again, private investigator mentality. Don't give away the house to find out what they think the house is by telling them what the house is. Ask them first, and then re-inform them of what you got. So I said, what? She goes, what do you mean? Tell you what I heard. I said, humor me. Just play along. Just tell me. She goes, fine. She says, I heard I heard a male, Caucasian, late 20s, early 30s, talking to somebody. I couldn't hear somebody else responding, but it sounded like he was having a conversation with someone. I said, that's what I heard. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I excused myself to go in the other room. I said, by the way, did you hear the telephone ring before you heard the guy talk?
No.
And she goes, no.
Oh.
I said, yeah, the telephone was me calling the answering machine from down here because I thought there was a message on my answering machine. I said, in the 5 minutes I've been away, I said, I've been going through the entire house to see if a window was open. I said, because it's 60 degrees outside, I know for a fact, and I found out that all the windows were closed. So it wasn't a next door neighbor or the neighbor below me talking or somebody outside talking that was echoing and coming inside the house that we were hearing. I said, it wasn't a message on the answering machine because both of us didn't hear a telephone ring before he spoke. I said, there were no messages on the answering machine. There have been no calls on my telephone in the past 3 hours that you've been here. So what we heard was a fucking ghost. First she goes, so you mean to tell me we heard? I said, yeah, we heard a ghost. And she goes, that's it, I'm out of left.
She left? She left?
Oh, yeah. And a month later, about 8 in the morning, I'm in my bed and I'm waking up and I look up to the ceiling and I'm like, okay, I got my 2 dogs and my 4 cats on the bed with me. And all of a sudden, I start hearing footsteps on the ceiling. And it's not like I'm hearing the footsteps inside the room.
Uh-huh.
I'm hearing the footsteps on the floor above me, which is the living room. And there's my balcony is right to my right. And the upstairs balcony is right above my balcony on the right as well. And I'm hearing footsteps going 1, 2, 3, 4 in the direction from the balcony, which is locked and has an alarm sensor on it. And is walking through the living room into the dining room towards the kitchen. And I am stone sober, looking up, wide awake, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can count 7 footsteps across the ceiling going into the kitchen or the dining room, and I'm going. And I turned to my left and I looked, and my alarm on the house was all turned on quite well and working, and the infrared motion sensor that covers that whole room was operative.
So
And
basically,
all
you're
the,
telling me that the level that where you heard the footsteps, supposedly there is no level there. There is no
no,
house.
the floor above me, which is my ceiling, is the floor for the living room, for the
Oh,
top
okay,
floor.
okay, okay, okay.
So I'm hearing it go from outside of the balcony, from the
Oh, okay.
balcony
Now I
to the
understand.
kitchen above me, and I'm counting it. And it's not like people say, "Oh, the ghost was inside the room walking on the ceiling." It's like, no, you dumbass. The ghost was in the goddamn living room, walking from the balcony to the goddamn kitchen, into the living
Wow.
room, into through the dining room, and that's exactly what I heard. And they were clear as a bell. And I sat there in bed for an hour going, I'm not going upstairs. I said, the alarm's on, so it can't be a human, and I'm not really interested in going upstairs and confronting a ghost. I
Is-
wasn't really into it. I said, the fact that he's there and letting me know that he's there is more than enough evidence that he's there, and I'm down with it.
But I
Because again,
take it.
it goes back to confirming the spirit that my laborer heard with the voices and footsteps. Well, I heard both the voices, and a month later I heard the footsteps. So I was pretty much convinced that I was getting the same kind of activity that my lady was having, and I was pretty much, how should we say, confirming the fact that, yeah, this house is pretty active. I have no problem with it, though.
Well, you know what? Don't get me wrong. That can be unsettling, like what you said. Okay, steps. Somebody walking, and I take it you knew there was no other way that somebody could get up into this floor above you without you knowing about it.
Yeah. I mean, the alarm was still. Here's the thing. I got up an hour later. I go up. I go upstairs. I turn off the alarm and I check all the sensors. Everything was working fine. The freaking door to the balcony, the sliding glass door, which is 70 feet above the ground,
Oh
was
wow!
locked. The front door was deadbolt and had the deadbolt and the other lock on it. The motion detectors were working fine. So whatever it was not earthbound. Let's put it that was not of this earth, physically speaking.
Right.
That much I'm pretty confident in believing and understanding, 100%. But it didn't. I mean, I freaked out, and then I went upstairs like, okay, that's pretty cool. I said, that's pretty cool. I said, okay. I'm not. It didn't hurt me. It didn't harm me. He let me know that he was
Right.
there, and it's like, okay. I'm not. I don't. I should say, I don't go finding myself in the position of becoming the epitome of Casper the Friendly the Ghost
Right.
responses. Because, as I mentioned to you earlier in our previous conversation, we're all going to pass from this earth at
Oh
some point.
sure.
So, fearing those who have already passed and being afraid of them and being afraid of, spirit coming back to visit us is kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of absurd. It's kind of
Well,
insane.
a lot of it is fed into the paranoia that, you see on TV sometimes that, when people have any type of experience, they all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I'm about to get possessed. Hold on. So, and I asked you earlier, and I'm going to ask you now, when you bought that lot, there had never been a building there on that lot before. Your
Yeah,
house was the first construction there, right?
yeah, it was the very first time. There was nothing here. It was basically a vacant lot, and had been forever. It had never. Somebody, Lisa Williams said in a famous article, the quote, "Well, somebody have made that Sharon might have known somebody that lived on David's property in a house that was there before." And it's like, not possible.
Right.
There's never been a home or a residence on this piece of real estate prior to my construction ever and ever.
So let me ask him, David. You had that experience, which, like I said, it's not. It is unsettling, but then, like you said, it's like, okay, all he did was talk and walk across. At what point did you start having some more common, or that you thought was coming over from the properties next door? Because where you were starting to question, what's the origin of all of this?
Well, I I always knew that they were around,
Mm-hmm.
but I always knew that they weren't the only ones. That I'm not. A ghost has to wear a ball and chain, and people are like, why would they
Right.
go to your house? Why wouldn't they stay? It's like the myths that people concoct or buy into from stories and tales of folklore and whatever, and television and films is far from true. Why would a spirit be stuck tied to a piece of real estate when the house itself is destroyed and been demolished 40 some odd years ago in 19, it's not 40, 25 years ago, 1992. So 94, and 23 years ago. So I don't buy into that, but I always felt there were presences beyond just them. Just because they died a horrific death down the street doesn't mean that they're the only spirits in the area.
Right.
Um, and that's kind of like what I always felt. I always felt, honestly, friends of mine that were coming here during the construction always kept telling me, um, they always kept feeling the presence of Native Americans. And I would have to admit, I was the biggest, most dismissive putz about the commentary. I mean, I was like, oh yeah, the Native Americans. Oh yeah, yeah, really? You said you got what? You got Geronimo and some of his relatives ring. It's like bullshit. And I mean, it's a real callous, stupid, inane, insensitive, way to think. And stupid, I will admit, because after doing research,
Right.
I found the whole truth and the history of this area was quite to the contrary. There were Native Americans in this area in Southern California, Los Angeles County, 10,000 years ago that lived here. The
Yes.
Tonka tribe in 8,000 BC, apparently they started living in this area. And they encompassed a large swath of Los Angeles County and part of Orange County, all the way out towards Riverside County they were. And I mean, when I found this out and I said, oh, no way. And again, right. Thank you for saying that. For a second there, a lot of people said, believe that Native Americans had powers that we don't. And it's like, no. Native Americans were human beings like we are. Their beliefs were totally different than we are. But they had no supernatural powers that we don't possess, that they possess that has been lost. It's insight that is what the power that they had, and the ability to discern and to see things that were naturally occurring and to attribute them to something that was bigger and better, bigger and wider, much well beyond their capability of comprehension. But they respected it. I'm sure, and I have no doubts that the Native Americans knew that the energies here present in this area were present in this area. Were here.
Right. And
I
and
think
they just couldn't
I think as a matter of fact, when my friends used to come up here and we used to go walk to where the Tate House stood 15 years ago when I bought the lot, when Harvey Weintraub was still tinkering around with Casa Bella, um, that they kept on picking up Native American energies that were there, and also could feel this energy like in the earth. And I think that that's true. I think that there was and still is in this area an electromagnetic anomaly that Barry
so
and
here
put
you are, you've had that experience, but you're okay with it.
yeah.
And then what happened?
So then stuff started happening around the house, and I was going to say Jesus. Let's see, 2000. Shortly before that is when Barry came into the picture. So we can now backtrack.
Okay.
I was working on my movie, and my publicist friend brought Barry in because he knew this Barry was a friend of his, and he says, "Oh, this friend of mine, Barry Taft, worked with Thelma Moss at UCLA back in the day." And I said, Thelma Moss. I haven't heard her name in years. And most people don't even know in the paranormal field. This is
Yeah.
how funny it is about the paranormal field. Few people know who the she was.
Yeah.
And it's like, excuse me, Thelma Moss was one of the first
Parapsychologists.
parapsychologists back in the late 60s, early 70s, who documented her findings and actually came up with theories and tested them in something called the theory about Carillion photography, which in her estimation was taking a living plant, a leaf, and she would put this over this special type of a radiographic type of a camera setup. And she said, she goes, look what happens when I take this leaf and I cut the leaf in half and I take this part of the leaf away.
Right.
And she showed you where the leaf was there. You saw the cut. And then what you saw was the outline and the image of the part of the leaf that had been removed.
Right.
It was basically saying that energy in a physical form can be disturbed, but energy in a what is what's the word I'm looking for? In its natural state does not change form. It retains its state. That it still shows and Barry had worked with her, he said, on the original entity case, which took place in Culver City. And I said, hey, you mentioned somebody I'm familiar with, because when I was a kid, I used to watch television shows that she was on and talking about, and I was just soaking it up as a kid. I was like drawn to Thelma Moss. So we brought Barry over, and Barry came to the house, and this is about 2005.
Okay.
So Barry came to the house, and I have to preface this: everything that Barry has said since 2006 or 7 about me in the house should be taken with a pound of salt, not a grain.
Okay.
Because to be dehydrated, re-examined thoroughly and completely before it's actually put up there for all to consume in the mass media. Because
all right.
Barry's not an honest person when it comes to factual personal issues. Forget the paranormal stuff. Barry's pretty good about. For the most part, there are a few things that he said about me which are complete lies and aberrations of the truth, as I could say, but are factually unfounded, let's say. But Barry came here, and Barry, I'm trying to think if he first came to the house just to walk through, and he says, oh, it just feels that the energy is crazy, blah, 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 blah. And then he says, look, I want to come back with my equipment, can I? I said, yeah, please.
Okay.
Because it's not like Barry tried it over here with all of his equipment. It's like, no, Barry wanted to meet and greet. Because, look, if you're a real professional and you live in the city and there's no time, like, I've got to go now. I've got a time restraint. I got to fly back to where I live.
Right.
You're going to be more laid back and say, well, let me just take a look at this. Let me see what the hell it is and take a firsthand gander at it before I go and invest the time and energy to schlep all my equipment over here and to set up doing investigations here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Barry comes through the house and he's like, just taking it all in. He goes, yeah, there's definitely stuff that I feel in here. It feels because I don't know. He goes, this is definitely a place I want to come back to with my equipment. May I? I said, yeah, sure. I said, I'd be happy to. So Barry came back with his equipment, another time. So the first time he came here, he didn't get violently ill. He didn't pass out. I didn't pass out. I still have yet to pass out. Unlike what Barry has said about me in so many words that I'm, boy. So then he came back with the equipment and he started doing research at the house and started saying, something? I'm showing on my DC geomagnetometer, my DC digital geomagnetometer, that you've got DC EMF levels that are off the charts. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, let me give you an idea. Normal is between 3 and 500 milligauss positive. I said, what's that? He goes, that's the Earth's magnetic field in this around this hemisphere. I'm like, okay. He goes, in your house, my piece of equipment is peaking at 2,000 milligauss. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, in some parts it's peaking at 2,000 milligauss hot, in other parts it's peaking at 2,000 milligauss negative. I said, you mean positive and negative? He goes, like there's magnetic field. I'm going, he goes, that's not to say that the readings couldn't exceed 2,000 milligauss. He said, my equipment
just doesn't measure it.
Okay. It will only measure up to 2,000 milligauss, either positive or negative. And I was like, wow. He goes, well, and then he starts thinking, well, there's lots of theories about this. He's, this is the first time he's here. He goes, there's a lot of things I want to do more research. I want to bring more people here. I want to bring more equipment here. And that's where it began. And then Barry came back here with Todd Ferris and his wife, part of the San Gabriel Valley Paranormal or Ghost Hunters Society or something. And then Barry brought in Barry Conrad, and there were different, I think, like I said, I don't want to get into it, but lots of things occurred here with Barry and that stuff.
Okay.
One incident, a glass of wine flew from the bar across towards Barry in the stairwell and hit the wall and basically fell. It was just a plastic cup halfway full of wine. Excuse me.
That's pretty unusual.
Yeah, but we had stuff happening. He was hearing disembodied voices and labored breathing at the bottom of the second staircase, the bottom of the landing for the second floor staircase, where other people had also complained of hearing the same exact thing. It's interesting because what he said then is not what he says now.
Okay.
I mean, he and I had arguments left, right, and center about, do I think it's Sharon Tate, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, Barry, I said, I know I saw Jay goddamn Sebring a year earlier, so I know what the hell I saw. And it was Jay, and he was not talking. He was just pointing towards the house next door, or the lot next door, towards the driveway. So it couldn't have been that he was doing a loop, because I can't imagine when he was alive that there was a point in time when he'd be sitting there doing a quarter turn from his torso up in real life.
Did you see what, later on, or at some point you realized was Jay Sebring?
Well, in 2004, in the summer of 2004, mid-July, my girlfriend at the time, who was a flight attendant with American Airlines, was flying the European route, and my mom was dying of cancer.
Wow.
And in the middle of the night, I woke up and I saw this apparition, and I didn't realize who it was. I thought it was just a relative, an emissary who passed away, letting me know that my mom had died or that my girlfriend had gotten killed in Europe. And I didn't recognize it as Jay Sebring. His hair, see, my hair is straight.
Right.
Jay Sebring made his hair this straight by putting in what he created, this hair gel, which helped men with kinky curly hair to give them hair relaxant that could give him this look, because that was a big look in the 60s with straight hair.
Right.
And Jay had naturally occurring kinky hair. But the spirit that I saw, it didn't look like all the pictures of Jay with his straightened hair. It was Jay, but I didn't recognize him with this coarse, kinky hair parted to the side.
Because you're thinking of the pictures that were out there.
Right. And then I found this, needless to say, I found a photograph when I was doing some research on the murders and trying to find photographs of this lot on the day of the murders, if anything was discarded here. Mm-hmm. I came across a picture, and it was Jay, and I said, oh, my God, that's who the hell I saw. I flipped the picture over, and it said, Jay, his natural hairstyle. I'm going, holy shit.
Okay.
Ding, ding. So, like I was saying, is that people have given me lots of theories about this paranormal. I have yet to see any of those theories pan out uniformly across the board where a theory can be applied, as you say, broad spectrum, not just in an isolated spectrum of a quarter of a millimeter. So I said to Barry, but Barry, he was communicating with me. He was trying to tell me something, and it had nothing to do with something that he was doing in repetition in life and just reenacting that act.
Right.
I said, that shows cognitive connection of some sort, that he is literally trying to communicate something to me that is totally unrelated to his experience when he was alive. This is about now, me, him, and something he's trying to directly connect to me with. And Barry's like, I don't know about that. I said, well, then why was he doing this motion of pointing towards the driveway?
Right.
What it later turns out to be is, as I've now found out, is that he was pointing towards the lot next door, which has now been totally, the mountainside was eviscerated. They took the double lot, which is 110 feet, and went 90 feet down the driveway of that lot, or 85 feet of it, and sliced down like a cake and cut out the entire hillside and built this monstrosity of a house there.
Wow.
That's, in fact, what Jay was pointing to some 13 years ago, some 7 years before construction on that house was even begun.
So basically, they totally have changed what the landscape, in other words, of what was there, is what you're saying. They've, because if you're
Next door
talking,
to me is this, the lot that the hillside that was next door to me doesn't exist. It's now, like I said, they put up 20 caissons across the frontage of the driveway, went straight down 60 feet, cut out the mountain, and literally took away all the mountain here and built the house on the flat pad up. And Sharon's is no different. Sharon's 1994, they demolished the house from one end of the property, the entrance of the driveway, all the way around to the other side, took bulldozers and flipped the earth 3 feet under and turned it up. But, get this, they left 2 bearing walls and the original floor from the Tate kitchen on the property to get away with a remodel permit.
Oh, right, because it's not a new construction, it would be remodeling. Oh.
It's considered a remodel. So they kept 2 bearing walls and the floor, and I know for a fact because when Harvey Weintraub, the man who did this whole muckety-muck on the property, was trying to sell the house while my dad and I were building this house here in 1999, 2000, he offered my father, he says, Paul, come on over. He goes, bring your son. So we went to the house. He tried to sell my father that place. And my dad says, maybe I could get it for a steal. I said, but Dad, it's such an abomination as it is now. No, you got to remember what Harvey did there was obviously monstrous in the sense that when we went into the house, it was like he had 25 foot tall ceilings in this grand hallway. And I'm like, I could see putting a second floor here. Why do I need to use this kind of waste of space and maybe make a 12-foot high ceiling instead of a 12-foot high ceiling above me and have 2 floors instead of 1? And then furthermore, you go into the place and you see these grand living room areas. And then I go look to my right and I go, the fuck is that? And what I was referring to was this 12-foot long by 8 foot tall by 8 foot deep fireplace.
Wow.
Not one, but throughout the house there must have been 4 of these god-awful fucking monstrous castle-like, medieval castle-like fireplaces where you could put a 400-pound pig on a spit and rotisserie it over the fucking fire. I mean, I was like, and I looked up into the thing and I go, oh my God, look at that. And the chimneys were about 4 foot diameter smokestacks going straight up 40 feet. The fucking God's green earth do you need this for? You think you're in and the room, the ceiling in that room was also like 30 feet tall. And I'm going, to heat this place is going to be an extravaganza. And I'm thinking, we walk through the upstairs and then you get into the master bedroom and there's a little tiniest, smaller version of that fireplace. So it's only 6 foot wide, 7 foot wide, and it's 6 feet high and 6 foot deep. And I'm going, what the hell? And then in the kitchen, he's got a fireplace in the kitchen that's like, I said, what do you need that? He goes, oh, that's our wood pizza fireplace. I'm going,
okay.
And then, like I said, there were rooms that literally reminded me of the Winchester house. I kid you not. You'd go into a room there would be a doorway into a room, and it would be like, you think you're going into a closet. It's like, no, it just dead ends into a little space. And I'm going, the do I need this for? I said, well, you going to put shelves in here? There's no doorway. I don't quite understand what I'm looking at. I said, this doesn't make sense. I said, this house, I said to my dad, I said, Dad, it's a mess. It's such a mess. I don't know where to begin. I said, I know that it reminds me of the Palace of Versailles for the enormity of it, but it's a mess. It's a complete mess. And he goes, I couldn't consider buying it. He goes, I couldn't get it for a cheap enough price that I could do something with what he's already done, which now has to be redone.
Let me ask you, did they demolish the caretaker's cottage also?
Oh, God, everything's gone.
Everything?
When I said bulldoze from one end to the other, I say it because there's a video that I bought a number of years ago on eBay, and it's called the Tate House Demolition and Walkthrough. And what it is comprised of somebody on a VHS camera that was going in the house while Trent Reznor was still living there, and they walk through the place and they show where Trent's got his mixing board right on the spot where Sharon Tate's body was found.
Wow.
And Trent recorded downward spiral there. I forgot the name of the album that he produced there, but he called the estate that when he was living there, he called the recording studio Le Pig.
I heard something about that. Now that you mention it, I've heard
He,
something about that.
he took the front door, the famous or the infamous front door from the Tate House that was written in Sharon's blood, Pig, out of the property when they demolished it. Before they demolished it, he took it with him to New Orleans, apparently, they said. And the video is pretty crazy because it shows the whole entire house, the walkthrough of the house. Again, this is 1994, 25 years after the murders.
Right.
Then it shows the bulldozing and of the estate. And literally, when I was there back in 2000 and 2001, when Harvey Weintraub was still building it, there wasn't the backyard was literally, you could see that it was earth that was still turned over.
Right.
All the way. The whole entire swath of land, the whole entire property was just, and there wasn't a blade of grass left. They even moved the telephone pole from the left side of the road to the right side of the road. That's how systematic they were about demolishing it. Then again, you got to remember, they left two bearing walls and the floor.
Because of the...
there. So as systematic as it was, to a lesser degree, not so systematic. It was pragmatic is what it was.
But let me ask them, did they do that because of the reputation of the house, or just because for practical purposes, that they just wanted to get a bigger house, or...
Oh, I think that, look, he said he wanted to basically start with a clean slate.
Oh, okay.
I don't think Harvey gave a rat's ass, but one way to put it to rest in his mind, in the public's mind, is by doing what he did, which was he flipped the earth, literally.
Okay.
The concrete, every stitch of land. I'm talking about the driveway wasn't spared. Not even the goddamn driveway was left. When we would walk on that property, you'd walk from the paved driveway of the drive here to a dirt road. So it was literally, the entire property was literally flipped.
And have you ever heard of anything happening over there, or?
I am not at liberty to say two bits about anything past what I've just disclosed about my experiences when Harvey Weintraub owned it.
Okay.
And that's just I just can't. Nor can I say anything about any of the other houses in the area, because that would be defamation of property value, or defamation of property value type of thing if I started saying other people's. That's why I don't ever say, and I don't assume, I don't make claims to know. I don't know, and I keep it quiet.
Alrighty then. I get it. I understand.
So
it looks like you have enough going on anyway at your house.
Those questions, those about that thick column of postcards with questions, you can throw those away because I can't and won't. Just can't.
So, as time went by, did occurrences start? I mean, did Jay come back and keep on trying to interact with you? Because I'm thinking also it's because you're sensitive. You could actually hear and see it. That might also be part of it.
No, I honestly wish that I had seen more of them. I haven't seen them since, 13 years ago was the last time I saw any of them. 2000, that was the last time I saw physically my first and only apparition. I mean, I'd welcome the opportunity to see any of my friends that have passed away or relatives that have passed away have their apparitions appear. But to this date and time, I have yet to see any of my friends or relatives that have passed. I get to see strangers I've never known. Might have met, but never known. Go figure that out.
What do you think, throughout the years has been creating the anomalies in the house?
Well, I think what Barry said was true, that the house, that naturally occurring, there's a geomagnetic anomaly in the earth here, just like lots of places on the earth. Where it exists, there's high EMF levels. I think that a lot of the fact that there's not the coincidence, but the way that the structural engineer designed the house has a great deal to do with that as well, because he didn't know that there was a high DC EMF level occurrence in this area, an anomaly.
Okay.
But in the house, in the structure, in the framing, it basically instructed my dad to, or designed into the framing, four steel I-beams, like what you see on a skyscraper,
Right.
and six steel columns to support those four steel I-beams under the second and third floors. And then you got tie in with this 30-foot wide iron spiral staircase, which if you look at all the houses in the neighborhood, none of the houses here, have the amount of steel that's in this structure, except for the house maybe next door. There was an issue with, how should we say, that we knew what we were doing when we were building the house. It was a matter of circumstances that the lot sits on a geomagnetic anomaly.
Right.
The contracted structural engineer decided that due to earthquake circumstances in the area, it would be prudent to go this route, not just to build it all out of wood. Had he said go with wood, this house might not have been anything of what we have here today. That's the irony. It's the simple points of fate when you put them all out and you throw them out, like when you throw marbles and jacks, as we used to do as kids.
Right.
You don't know the pattern. It's a random pattern, so you think. Not so random when you look back upon it going, dot, 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 all had to line up for this to occur.
So let me ask something, David. That geomagnetic anomaly, is it only on your property? Did Barry or anybody expand out how far it would go out?
Yeah, there's a video somewhere, I think. Yeah, go look at the Ghost Adventures show, since I don't want to lay claim and purport something that I'm going to be brow-basted for. But on that episode, they show a map of where my house is, and they went out on a limb, because I certainly the hell wouldn't, to show how far out this geomagnetic anomaly extends for. And what Barry said in the show is, it goes out for about this is the epicenter in this area. He goes where I am, but it's far extending out into like a mile in all directions.
Wow. Okay.
And he says so it's a mile out, so it's like 2 miles. He goes, it's just a swath of land. He goes, it's huge. And what he said to me is that he didn't believe that it was pre-seismic or had anything to do with the fault lines or ley lines. He says there is an inactive fault line in Benedict Canyon. Mm-hmm. But what he surmised is that it's probably a magma tube under the earth here.
Okay.
And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you can see a magma tube or a magma lake. I said, okay. He goes, well, under the Earth's surface, there's magma. I said, of course. He goes, well, there's like a river of it, and it's a big pond or pool of it under the Earth here. And if you know anything about magma, it is highly magnetized. Okay. And even though magma, and it sounds like magnetized, I'm not making a joke, it is. Because when you go to Hawaii, they have huge EMF levels that are off the charts. If you go onto the lava plains where there's lava, fresh, as you say, not fresh poured lava, but fresh lava flows that have been exposed, that are exposed, he says those places as well have high geomagnetic anomalies where compasses can't find true north, because that magma is so loaded with iron bits and pieces and
that it throws the magnet off.
That it's totally magnetized. And he goes, what he believes is that this magma lake under the earth here, which he says maybe in 10,000 years could turn into a volcano if it's so desired. Right. Because that's not what we're worried about. Because it's just the fact that as it's shifting and moving under the earth, it's discharging an electromagnetic field going up to the earth. And the fact that my house sits on 13 caissons, which are 3-foot diameter concrete piles laid into that are poured into the ground, reinforced with steel rebar, is basically magnetizing all of that steel going up through the caissons, then going up through the gray beams, which is part of the foundation of the house, and then going through the steel columns and becoming magnetized, and then magnetizing all four of the steel I-beams and the wrought iron spiral staircase, creating this huge dynamic magnetized energy field in this house.
So if I walk in there with, let's say, with a compass into your house, it works okay, or does it not?
Some parts of the house, the compass will deflect. Okay. And it doesn't matter if it's a regular compass or a iPhone compass. Mm-hmm. We've seen it. They just can't find true north.
It goes round and round. Yes. Exactly.
And in certain parts, they deflect like 180 degrees. And it's like in the earthen wall room, there's a spot in the corner which is right next to behind the bathroom in the guest bedroom there, and it's all wood. And this compass goes cockeyed, cannot find true north to save its soul.
Wow. So yeah, whatever is going on there is definitely sounds like it was tied to the land itself, whatever, long before anybody built anything there.
Yeah, it's in the earth. It's just an anomaly in the earth. It's just that simple. And, to make more out of it is neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is it's the way the house was designed, and unbeknownst to the structural engineer, it's got a lot of steel in it, so that causes a lot of, energy to be amplified in the house, is what we've noticed. And what Barry then said was, due to the fact that the elevated EMF levels, he said that are constant. Okay. He says when he's gone on paranormal investigations, the meters will when a spirit manifests, the meters will spike to where their levels are in my house and then return to normal after the manifestation. He said, where in my house, they're always up here.
Wow.
So he theorized when people walk in that the cadre of spirits around them can manifest much more easily because they're in an environment that allows them the ease of use of the energy present to do things versus having to manifest and drain their own energy to do things.
Right, because you're like the best battery ever times 10 over on that house. Now, I know that you've had tours and people come in to do investigations. Have anybody ever had an experience that you yourself have said, wow, what was that?
Yeah, unfortunately, it had nothing to do with a tour. It had to do with a TV show. One of the most memorable and that most amusing, I would have to say, looking back on it now, points of interest that people always remark to me about is, look what happened to Zach Baggins here at the house. And I go, yeah, look what happened to Zach Baggins here at the house. He's one of only less than a handful, because a handful would be at least more than 3 people that have been here that have had unpleasant, nasty experiences here. And the other one was Barry Taff. But okay. Barry Taff, here's the irony about Barry Taff. Barry, goes on the talk show circuit and lays claims to this, that, and the other thing, and did so on Aftershocks, that he was terrified of the house and will never come back here because he fears for his life, etc., etc. Let me just preface this whole thing and come back to the reality and truth of that.
Okay.
Barry came here in 2005 in May or June to see the house. For the next year, Barry came here over 25 times.
Wow.
If I recall correctly, he stated that he feared for his life. After the first time he was here, he tells the story that he passed out. And every subsequent visit, he was rushed to the hospital.
I take it that's not accurate.
That is 100% lie. Everything he said there was a lie. He never passed out when he was here. He never fainted and had a fainting spell when he was here. He never went to the hospital when he was here. You want to know what's funny? That Jeff Mandel and Kashmir used to drive Barry up here all the time and pick him up and give him rides up here. And they were his ride out of here.
Okay, so he never...
On enough occasions, they would go pick Barry up because Barry's car wasn't working, blah, blah, blah. Jeff and I were talking about this just a few nights ago, and Jeff, because we watched Ghost Adventures, the Aftershocks episode, and Jeff said, that's such a crock of shit. This wasn't the Aftershocks episode, it was the first episode. He goes, Barry is such a liar. Jeff and Kashmir said the same thing. He goes, we drove Barry up there at least a dozen times. And we drove him back to his house a dozen times afterwards. And at no time did we ever take him to the goddamn hospital. And I was like, I don't recall Barry ever going to the hospital. He goes, no, not from being here. The worst experience that Barry had, as I recall, was that Barry told me, after the first time he was here, he calls me up a few days later, he says, David, goes, yeah? He said, I'm having some terribly strange, violent sexual dreams.
Oh.
And I'm like, Barry, tell me, what is a violent sexual dream. He goes, well, more than the lines of a nightmare. And I go, I'm trying to wrap my fingers around just the first two components. Violent sexual dream. I said, tell me what the fuck. He goes, well, I go to bed, and all of a sudden I start dreaming. I said, I'm on my bed, and there are the three girls, really cute girls, all naked, standing above, kneeling next to me as I'm on the bed, and I've got my shirt off, and all of a sudden they start dripping candle wax on my chest. And I'm like going, okay. I said, you got me now with sexual. You got three naked girls kneeling next to you, massaging you, okay, and dripping candle wax on you. That's pretty kinky there, Barry. That's pretty good. God, you got me convinced I'm sexual. I said, so then he goes, next thing you know, I start feeling my stomach. And I start feeling my pain in my abdomen. And I raise my head up and I look. And I look up and I look down at my stomach and I see these three women are now disemboweling me.
Oh my God.
And disemboweling me. And I'm going, okay.
Oh my God.
Now you've got me understanding exactly where you're coming from. Violent sexual dream. Okay. He goes, no, that's not it. I'm going, what, there's more? He goes, oh yeah. I said, what happens? He goes, I wake up and I start grabbing at my stomach and feeling like I can feel tactile sensations and pain on my stomach. And I'm like, whoa, Barry, that's the truth. He goes, it's not over. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I get up and I go into the kitchen and I make myself some warm milk. And I start to just go through and process what this dream was because it was so vivid and so real. Wow. He goes, yeah. He goes, and then I go back to bed. I said, okay, I go back. He goes, go back to bed. He goes, and then I said, then what? He goes, that's what happens. That's exactly that's what happens. I said, what? He goes, the dream picks up right from where it left off.
Oh my God. What?
And I said, what? He goes, yeah.
What?
He goes,
exactly.
Sleep? And we're right back to where we left off. And I go, oh my God. It's like, he says, it's like taking a book and putting it down, putting a marker in it, and coming back an hour later and opening it up and going right back where you started from. It's like, holy shit. He goes, yeah. And he goes, and I wake up again and I try to do the same thing and try to clear my head. I do it a little longer. I said, okay. He goes, that's not it. He goes, this has been going on for 3 or 4 nights now.
Wow. And this was after he was over there at your house.
The first time he visited. So that's the first time he visited. But it didn't stop him and deny him from coming back here more and more and more to the tune of 25 times. So what then happens is Barry puts out, starts mentioning to people and putting it out there about my house and about the paranormal, and it's starting to get through to other people, let's say.
Right.
And people in the know, like television producers and other people and shows. And at the time, I think one of the few shows was out that was Ghost Hunters. And I got a call from them. And I said, I wouldn't mind being on their show. And I think either they reached out to me or I reached out to them. And Barry basically had a tizzy fit.
Wow.
And Barry said, I cannot be a part and associated with your house and you if you're going to allow the Ghost Hunters team to come into your house. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, your house is one of a kind, David. He goes, I want to turn your house into a field research lab. I said, what? He goes, I want to get the top minds across the world in the paranormal field to come and do research at your house.
He was wondering if I think that also his interest in keeping you there, David, was he was wondering if you might be part of the catalyst, that if it wasn't just the house by itself.
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, as I stated, I said I'm not a lab rat, and I've never really said these words to people on TV shows, on radio shows or anything, but in so much detail, because in fact I've mentioned this and gone into scant points of it, but this is the detail that's true about this whole thing. It's like I said, I'm not doing that, Barry. I said, so get that out of your head. I said, and then he backtracked. He goes, well, maybe we do a smaller, we'll do it, backtracking to, scale it down. I said, well, that may be, Barry, but, I really don't like the idea of me being, a circus, a sideshow attraction. I said, that just doesn't work. He goes, oh, you wouldn't be. We'll get Lloyd Arbach here and this and that, which is another one. Here's funny. Lloyd Arbach. He's known about my house for the past 12, 13 years now. 12 years.
Right.
Lloyd lives in San Francisco. Lloyd comes to LA all the time. Ask me, how many times has Lloyd Auerbach ever been inside my home?
How many times has Lloyd Auerbach been inside your home? 0. That's what I thought.
None. Never. I've spoken to Lloyd on the phone. I've spoken to him through the years and have made multiple attempts to get him to come down to visit the house, just to see it for himself.
And what? Doesn't take you up on that offer?
Doesn't. No, I've spoken. Oh, I can't. I've got this, got that. I say, Lloyd, next time you're in LA, come and hit me up. I'd love you to have him come over. I said, because Barry put him on a pedestal and said Lloyd was the gosh darn, was one of the top, Barry looks at Lloyd as a compatriot in the paranormal profession, as a true parapsychologist.
Okay.
And as I said to other people, I said, look, I've approached multitudes of the people on television shows in person about coming here. Chip Coffey, Josh Gates. I think I'm friends with Jason Gates from the Haunted
No,
Collective.
you're right. Josh Gates, he does.
Josh Gates from, the Fact or Fake or Screw You in the Eight.
Right.
I mean, I've had Dana Workman here from Haunted Collector. I've invited Jack Osborne here several times, recently as last month, to come for an investigation we were doing here for Halloween.
Okay.
I've invited all the bigwigs.
Okay.
None of them have bothered to take me up my offer, except for Josh Gates, and what's-her-face, Dana Workman, and I think a few of the others. Lisa Williams came here on her own volition and found my number and contacted me after I was on Ghost Hunters 11 years ago. And she goes, I want to see your house. And that's what I would expect from every single quote-unquote professional parapsychologist, right. That you'd think that if they thought that my house was really as haunted as it is, that they'd be beating a path to
absolutely.
This
absolutely.
firsthand if they were truly intrigued by it. And I haven't. We've had James Von Prague here. He came with with Larry King Live a few years back.
Okay.
Chris Fleming has been here first with the Ghost Hunters show and then several times since.
Okay.
And had great experiences here. We had Chris Moon here. We've had Rick, what's his name? Rick Mandel. Oh, no. Rick McCallum from the Hollywood Ghost Hunters. We've had R.A. Mahalaha from the Hollywood Ghost Hunters. We've had Kane Hodder, famous for being, Freddy Jason from Friday the 13th series. I mean, I've had people here, but there have been vast amounts of others who I've invited to come here that haven't. And I find it amusing, amazing, and kind of preposterous that they still lay claim to being such bigwigs in the field when you think the Mount Everest of haunted houses would be a place you'd want to investigate when there's an open opportunity and a free invitation to come here, yet they don't.
Well, you know what? The thing about and then I'm talking here reality, not TV land.
Right.
If you're any type, whether you're a scientist or not, if you really are interested in proving, it's just the same as going and finding out, is it real or not? It's like you're not looking for a guaranteed outcome, in other words. You're going in there and see what happens. I have no skin in
the game where I'm pushing an agenda or an outcome whatsoever. I have enough faith and enough knowledge and experience in this house, over 15 years of it, and have witnessed countless times.
Exactly.
People come in. So I didn't make it my business. I felt that it was in my interest to offer them the opportunity to come here and see it for themselves as a generous offer with no strings attached, I don't want their report. I don't need their videotape. I just wanted them to experience because I wanted to share it with them because I felt that they were legitimate in the field.
Right. In other words, just to see what would happen when they were there. But like you said, no guaranteed outcomes. I can't tell you what and if anything's going to happen when you're here. I
just wanted to share the opportunity for them to see it. Just like, I had Lindsay Lohan find me out and come here and see the house 5 years ago. A pain in the ass waste of time, but I'll give her credit. She did it, and she was here. I can't say that for many of the others that are out there. I mean, we had Nick. Here's when Nick Roth came back here a year and a half ago in February of last year to do a plug and do some for lack of better words, to do a publicity campaign and bit for arrowinthehead.com for his new show on Destination America. And he was here for 5 hours, and he brought Katrina with him, or Destination America asked him to bring Katrina, and then told me about it when they arrived. So they went through the house. So I was like, cool. I said, I can't wait to see what happens with them.
Right.
If nothing happens, fine. If something happens, then grand. But I said, I want to videotape it because it's only one time that I can have you come back for the first time ever again since your experience here with Ghost Adventures 3 years earlier.
Right.
So I was diligent and had the whole thing videotaped, and I was reviewing the footage recently, as yesterday, with a friend, and it's still palpable. I'm still at odds with Destination America to get the rights to use the footage, because even if Nick comes back again, it's not the same as the first time he came back in two and a half years since the incident took place.
Right.
That's to be replicated. It only happens once. And
he does the thing where he's 72 hours. We're talking about paranormal lockdown, right?
That's why people say, when's he coming to your house? It's like, never. It'll never happen. He couldn't deal with this house for that long. He couldn't, period. Okay. It's not a slight against him. He just doesn't have the capacity to be able to deal with it. That's why I said they're never going to get a goddamn show about my house with him in it. The fact is I said, I got the footage from that. That's better than him coming back a second time, redoing it. I said, I got it on tape. I should use that footage. So I'm trying to desperately get the usage rights to broadcast that, because I'd incorporate it into a special about my house and say, here, you all remember Nick from his experience on another show a few years ago? Well, he came back, and here's what we got. Yeah. And it's crazy. But they were here for 4 hours, and that was enough. I can't see 72 hours here for either of them. They couldn't hack it. It would be too much for them to deal with.
You live there, so you're the one that day in and day out has that experience, like you said, in this place that got this anomaly going on. And if anybody would experience the difference, let's say, like you said, hey, they demarcated this area is where this anomaly exists. And you have that unique perspective. You've lived there for 15 years. So I'm thinking, I wonder if when he leaves there, does it feel different to him, because you're the only one that could really see it that way?
No, because I was going to say, before I lived here, before I bought the lot even, I was who I was. So it hasn't affected me in any way, as people said, as Barry also said, he goes, your cat's going to live shortened lifespans and your dog's going to live a shortened lifespan as well. Well, that's been proven completely wrong. My Ridgeback was 100 pounds and lived to be 13 years old, just shy of it. Wow. Ridgebacks generally live to be about 10. My other dog was a 70-pound Husky Whippet mix. She lived to be 15 years and 3 months.
That's a long life.
That's a long life for a dog of that size.
That is a very long life.
My cats lived to be, 18. Some of them, died of different things, but that had to do with the breed of cat that they were, like the Bengals.
In other words, you've disproved that theory that living there was going to affect your animals, because it sounds like they've lived normal, long lifespans. So
yeah, they've lived long, healthy lifespans. Barry said that David suffered from epilepsy and seizures. Like, hey, where did you come up with that from? I asked him in person when we were both together in Las Vegas shooting the Aftershocks episode.
Right.
Again, Mr. Baggins lays claim that he did this miracle by bringing two people together. There was never any animosity between me and Barry. I just basically cut ties with Barry, and Barry cut ties with me 10 years ago when he said, look, if you have the people from Ghost Hunters here, I cannot be involved. It'll tarnish my credibility. Therefore, I have to withdraw from being a part of this house and being involved in this house, because I can't take any chances that my credibility will suffer as a result of this exposure and connection with your house and their show. And I said, fine. And I said, Barry, what is this really about? Well, Barry said, then later on told me 10 years ago, said, well, the reason is that the Ghost Hunters show wanted me to be a part of their production. And I said, I want to be on camera. They said, well, we can have you on camera, but you're not going to be always on camera. You're not going to be one of the group. We'll bring you as an expert. And then they said, we might have to have some things that are manufactured, or as he said, recreated.
Right.
And he said, I will not do anything that is unethical. And he said, look, it's television. We have to do reenactments. We have to do recreations. And if we do something that's not exactly, then that's just, we have to do that sometimes. And Barry said, I won't be a part of this. If you're going to portray, in Barry's eyes, it was fraud. In their eyes, it was just, we're doing a reenactment. If we do a reenactment, Barry's like, and he goes, you're stretching it. We have to stretch the truth. We have to compress things. If you have to do this, I don't want to be involved. So Barry burned a bridge with Pellicer. Craig Pellicer and
right, exactly that. He was doing the ghost hunters and everything. Yeah.
So he didn't want them to do it their way. He wanted them to do it his way, and he wanted to be, in effect, creator of the show and be really an instrumental part. And they said that's not going to happen. And Barry and him, he burned a bridge and they fled. They broke off. So Barry telling me this, and I was like, well, Barry, if that's the way you feel, then that's the way you feel. But it's not going to stop me from having the show here, and that's that. And so Barry said, then that's it. We're cutting ties. It's like, fine. No hard feelings, no hard feelings. And I still talked to him through the years up until...
Right. I was going to ask you, does that mean that you just don't contact each other at all? Or?
Well, I talked to him. I talked to him a couple times through the years when stuff had happened here. And he goes, he never came back after 2006.
Right.
But it's kind of like, we still talk to him. I said, this happens at Barry, this. And I would call him and say, this, da-da-da-da. And he goes, well, that's something, because I'd always use him as a beat, as a bouncing backboard to get, information and get his take on it. I didn't have any animosity to Barry. And then, like I said, Barry fell off the map. I lost track of him. His mom and his dad died, and his living situation changed, and I couldn't get in touch with him. And then, I did the Ghost Adventures show a few years ago, and then it was like, that was like the fifth show I had done. And by that time, there had been a lot of interest in my house, and the notoriety started to blow up. And, Ghost Adventures wanted me on their show for a year, and I said, no. I said, I don't want to do it. I don't like your show. I'm really not a fan. I said, I've seen what you do. I was not impressed. I said, no. And so finally they said, we really want you to do it. And at that point I said, something, I need something to help do something for my movie. So I said, fine. Yes, I acquiesced and said, fine, I'll do the deal with the devil. Fully knowing well that shit was going to come back and haunt me. But I said, maybe not. Maybe this will be the one place that they don't crap on you. That they won't crap on me like they have in other shows of his episodes. And finally went through negotiations. We did the show, and they were during this filming of the episode. They were here for 3 hours. They started at 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, all the equipment failed, and they had to restart up. And we have all the batteries and all the equipment gone through, and started at 10 o'clock. So it's going to go from 10 to 4 in the morning. Well, 10 o'clock they go in the house and stuff starts happening right from the get-go, because for the prior 3 days that they had been shooting there without the crew and without the Ghost Adventures team, they were doing interviews, they were doing B-roll, they were doing the reenactment. The night before they did the lockdown, they did the infamous reenactments, which you can, if you watch the episode, you'll see a few sequences of a girl playing the part of Sharon Tate.
Okay.
If it's not in shadow, it's going to be her in full light in the white nightgown walking up the street covered in blood. It's the same actress. They shot that whole B-roll the night before.
Okay.
And the producers asked me what my take on this reenactment that they were going to do was, and I said 2 days early when they were floating the idea behind me, I said no. I said that story that Dre Fordham's telling you, that you're going to make this reenactment. I said, I know it's sensational. I know it's dramatic. I know it's really impactful. But I can't vouch for it. I said, I cannot vouch for it at all. I said, all I remember is that I spoke to her about 5 months ago. Out of the blue, she called me up. She told me that she had been here before a couple of years earlier with a bunch of people on a paranormal research group. And at the time that we were talking about, I had not and was not engaging in doing any public tours here. I wasn't opening up the house and getting paranormal teams up here to go do it. None of that. I'm talking about I have been reached out to by many, many, many paranormal research groups after the Ghost Hunters show that said they wanted to come up here and do their investigation. I said, sure, come on up. And I said, no charges? I said, no, just come on up here. He said, whatever you get, share it with me and let me see the footage. I said, that's it. I just want to see what you guys get. I wanted to open up the house for them. Well, she was apparently, as she says, with this group that came up here and did this investigation, blah, blah, blah. She wanted to come back up here on her own. And I said, no, okay, fine. I'll come back, fine. So we talked on the phone for several weeks, and then she just disappeared, just off the face of the planet. I didn't hear any more calls from her. She wasn't reaching out to come to the house or anything. It just, disappeared. And I chalked it up to another flake, whatever.
Right.
And then comes the Ghost Adventures show. And the producer mentions this story of hers. She drove up here with her mom, and at the bottom of the driveway, she came up 10 feet up the driveway, at which point she saw the apparition of Sharon Tate, bloody, in a white nightgown, covered in blood, walking up the street or whatever, and then she vanished.
And so you found out about this after the fact when they were trying to do the show there about that she had supposedly seen this on the driveway, etc. Right?
Well, yeah. Well, he said it was a Wednesday they were doing that, and they said to me, "We're doing the reenactments." Like, good. He goes, "Oh, we want to float this reenactment by you," because they asked me what reenactments I could provide them with for stories to do reenactments. And I told them about Charles Gould, and I told them about a few of the other incidences, but they want something that was really dramatic, that was really horrific. Period. And when they're shooting this, I'm out on the side of the house and on the street behind the cameras taking snapshots.
Okay.
And there's a picture I took of the girl, and there's this huge, enormous light pouring right out of her stomach.
Wow.
And it's like just you just see this big ball of light coming out of her stomach. It's all illuminated, and there were no lights behind her because they didn't want to have lights behind her flashing into the camera.
Right.
So what they did is they put the lights in front of her so that there would be a shadow effect.
Okay.
And she would look illuminated in a ghostly effigy. And as I'm taking these pictures, like I said, I took that picture, I looked at it going, holy, what the hell is that? And I looked down there, and you look at the other pictures, there's nothing behind her that would manifest this ball of light that's literally pouring out of her stomach. And I said to them, while they're doing this, I kept on feeling like pain and anger, and each second passing by was just more like, we're going to make them pay for this. Please, do not harm anyone. Do not hurt anyone. Do not cause any physical pain to anyone. Please don't. Producer hears me as I walk out there. He goes, well, what did you just do? I said, try to save your asses. He goes, no, what did you just say? He goes, I went to the top of the stairs because it's still my house. You guys are going to be in here for a few hours? That's fine. I said, I have a conscience. I said, I don't want anyone in my house to get hurt because what you guys have done, as I told you after, before we started shooting this today, that you guys are in for the time of your lives and I can't guarantee your safety.
Right.
So that's why I went to the top of the stairs to yell and scream at them, to plead with them, and to protest their anger and ask them to please not go AWOL on you. And he goes, oh, well, would you mind going back there and doing that again? I said, but this time don't curse and don't say fuck and all this. I said, yeah, I'll do it. I said, for the camera, huh? He goes, yeah, for the camera, please. And remember. I said, oh, I got it. So I did that, and which, I live to regret doing because Zach puts this in a book that he wrote called I Am Haunted.
Right.
And he writes 3.5 pages about me being, in the chapter where some places aren't haunted. Some people have people inside of them that are the source of the hauntings, that are the creation of the hauntings, that are actually the haunted, that are sharing their soul with other spirits in their body. My friend and I read the book, and I read it out loud, and he listened to it, and I did it on one of my YouTube or Facebook Live things. People were saying, when you look at it and you listen to it, he's making statements, but makes no statements of fact to back anything up. He just shoots his mouth off, and then it's like, you look at it and you go, well, if I look at the episode as a reference point, both episodes, none of what he said in the episode anything what I said that derides it. It all backs what I set up. And if you watch what he said, in the episode when he was here, I told him the story of Lisa Williams. She came
Right.
in the house. She looked at the top of the stairs leading into the living room, looks in the bar to her right and says, "Oh, you have a huge party there in your bar." And I'm squinting going, "What the fuck?" And she goes, "Oh, Sharon's there, Jay's there, Rudolph Valentino's there. Oh, yeah, and there's some Native Americans and some other people who I don't recognize that are there. But collectively, they want me to tell you that they all appreciate you letting them stay in your house."
Oh my God.
At which point I looked at Lisa after I gazed back to say, "Can somebody show themselves so I can see you, so I know who I'm talking about? Because otherwise I'm talking to air." I said, "Lisa," I said, "I don't know." I said, "I don't know about anybody else." I said, "But I've had the dubious honor of seeing the pictures of the murder victims."
So do you think that they're just hanging out? I have a feeling that they're hanging out there like maybe like what Lisa Williams said, whether because it was a tragic way they died, maybe who knows, but it's because they feel either because there's a good power supply there, and they feel good. Like you said, you're not going to throw them out. They can hang out as long David, as I know how to ask you before, and I'm going to, in case anybody wanted, it sounds like you have your access to the house or tours not on a regular schedule, just when you decide you're going to have it.
Honestly, I'm not. I don't have anything planned. And after the last event that we had a month ago, which I think was like the third time we did it this entire year in 2017, and what people don't realize is when I started doing this in 2013, I think I did eight. I think we did 6 weeks of it, maybe 5. We did 8 or 9 investigations. The following year, I did 6.
Okay.
This past year, I did 3, and it's just a natural kind of progression. It burnt. I'm burnt on it, and I don't.
Sure.
I don't think I'm ever going to do it again, because I don't. I'm not where I was when I was a couple years ago. I was eager to do it. After doing it so much, I'm kind of like, no, I want my privacy. I want my sovereignty. I want my home back. If I do anything, the only thing I want to do is to straighten the record out. And I'm now in the process of writing a book about the past 19 years of the endeavor from when we bought the lot to present day, and also about the history before 1890 of the footnotes that I examine that are kind of like scratch your head going, wait a second. Here's an example. 1769, August 9th. 200 years to the day.
I was going to say August 9th. Wait a minute.
Yeah, 1769, August 9th, 200 years to the day before the Sharon Tate murders took place, is a historical footnote that is eerie, because on that date, and it's recorded in a diary by one of the friars that was traveling with the Spanish conquistadors, that were the conquistadors and the expeditionary group that came up from San Diego and investigated and first treaded upon southern LA, what is now Los Angeles, took place. And on that date, in the mid-morning, the conquistadors and the expeditionary group made first contact with the Native American tribe that was here, the Tongva tribe, the head of the Tongva tribe. About 2.5, 3 miles as the crow flies from where we are right now. 1942, as the story goes, the native tribesmen decided, a group of them decided to go down there and to rustle and try to steal some of her livestock. Well, they've probably done this many times before, as I'm trying to hear. This wasn't the first time.
Okay.
But what was the first time is that the ranchero hands on the ranch there basically got the drop on it as it was happening, and a battle began.
Well, I can imagine.
And we don't know if there were other battles, but the significance of this battle is the fact that it was recorded, and the bodies and the location of the bodies and the incident was recorded in the records. And so we still to this day have scant records, but we have some records,
but some type of records, yes.
So what happened was they went down there. They then got into engaged in a running battle with the Tongva tribesmen, and 3 of the Tongva tribesmen that were basically involved in the skirmish were killed a mile away from here.
Yeah, it's all in that
And,
area. A mile is
right,
nothing.
and at that time it was the middle of the walnut grove. So apparently the tribesmen were killed, probably by muskets or gunshots, and their bodies were left there, and literally they were interred in the earth there. What's important is, again, the term that I just used, I'm being told, interred there. They weren't buried there, and I'll get back to these when I'm making very, very strong points about this. Their remains were left at that spot and were just left there and buried and were left interred into the earth.
Oh, okay. So there was no burial. It was not a consecrated cemetery thing.
The Tongva tribesmen didn't do it. The Mexicans that were there didn't want to gosh darn have their rotting bodies, so they dug a pit in the ground and dropped them all into it.
Wow.
About 90 years later, a little less, 1842, about 80 years later, 83 years later, I'd say about 1912, the Beverly Hills Hotel was built, and there are photographs that show the whole area is empty. All you have is this massive hotel with huge canyons and mountains around it, and there's not a shit thing around it. Well, later on, the city started to develop. They decided to build the Beverly Hills First Women's Club in 1925. Well, when they broke ground to start construction, they unearthed the remains of the 3 Native Americans.
Oh, really?
Interred on that spot. And on that spot, to this very day, is a good-sized 250-pound granite, maybe 200-pound granite boulder. Excuse me. And there sits a bronze placard on this.
Okay.
And on this placard, it reads the inscription. On this spot, 1925, the remains, since it talks about the Beverly Hills First Women's Club, the remains of 3 Native Americans were uncovered from a battle between the early Californians and the Native Americans.
Wow. Well, at least they commemorated it.
Well, yeah, but the point is that so fast forward to today, to present day. Lisa Williams comes into the house, goes into the 3rd level, take her in there, and she goes into the earthen wall room, and the first thing she says to me is, do you know there's a Native American, and she's pointing up to the Mount of Earth, and she goes, he was on horseback, and him and his horse died on the side of the hill here. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, what I'm getting is that they were walking across what is now the driveway, which was a horse path.
Okay.
And she described that led to the end of the driveway, which was a large plateau that looked over and down upon the canyon below it. I said, yeah. And she goes, they used to use that end of the driveway as ceremonial land. I said, ceremonial? She goes, not burial, but like ceremonial. There was lots of energy there. And it's like, energy in the earth? She goes, yeah, this is coming up from the earth in that spot. And it was also afforded them an ability to have the high ground to look down upon the canyon below. So if people were coming up towards them, they could have a good defensive position, so they knew that something was happening, because they were driven, she said, from the lower lands further up into the hills, because the flatlands were turned into farms and were farmland, were turned into walnut groves and stuff. The Native Americans were basically pushed out by the Spaniards and the Mexicans that were taking over the land.
Okay, so yeah.
And I said, okay. So she says he was walking. What he told me is he was walking across the path, and the horse lost its footing.
Ooh.
And she says he was a rattlesnake or something, or it's lost its footing, and it fell down with the horse, the rider on the horse, and they tumbled down the hillside and landed. Was stopped by a tree. And if you go into the earthen wall room today, you can see there's about a tree stump that's probably about a good 17, 18 inches in diameter that we had to cut when we built the house, because there was a tree there.
Right.
Whether or not that's the tree, it doesn't matter. There have been many trees on this hillside, I'm sure, that no longer were there when we built the house.
Right.
The point is it made sense. And she says that the horse and rider both broke their necks and died. And their remains were left there. Nobody knew about them. You're 70 feet from what is here's the street. You're 70 feet down the slope of the hill. And she goes, through the years, their remains were covered through with mudslides
Yeah, of
and different
course.
things, and all that was left, their bones were left, but their bones basically were covered by mud and covered in mounds of mud and interred in the earth. I said, okay. I said, that's interesting. I said, I appreciate that, Lisa. And she goes, I said, great. I never told anybody about that story that Lisa told me for one reason. I figured, this is a great opportunity. If, in fact, what she said was true, I can use this as a barometer. When other people come in, if somebody else should come in that's psychic and say the same thing, then I should be able to say, thank you very much, and put that feather in my back of my hat and say, okay, there's Lisa's the first one. Now you got this one, you got this one. And so that way it's kept in a kind of a vacuum so that nobody knows about it except me, and I'm not talking about it. And I don't think that other psychics like Chris Fleming and James Van Prague and all these other ones would be talking in the same group. It's not like you're all like used to, like, you think that just because you know one actor, you think one actor is everybody else. It's like they're people. Just because he was in the same movie with somebody or same TV show doesn't mean they're friends, doesn't mean they hang out together. It means they work together. That's it. There's no connection. So Lisa Williams says this. Chris Fleming comes in. He gets it. Gets the same thing. Let me see. I spoke to Marianne Winkowski about it. She picked up on it. So she's the real-life ghost whisperer. James Van Prague came in. He picked up on it. Other different psychics that came in and picked up on the same thing. Okay. And I kept saying, I can't believe that every one of these people is saying the same thing repeatedly over and over and over and over and over again. It's like, wow, this is amazing. They don't know each other.
But they're saying the same thing.
And they don't. I'm sure they don't say that. Let's confirm about the Oman House, because that's just not the way things are in the field. So I was like, finally, I told Zach Baggins. I said, all right, I'll tell him. You watch the episode. I tell him what I told him, and yet he has the distinct desire to embellish, which is a nice way to say to lie. To blow things up to a proportion which doesn't exist in reality, but it's sensational and it sounds terrific and it sells. And he goes out. It's just not true. David's house is built on Native American ceremonial burial ground. And I'm watching the episode and I rewound and I said, "Wait, what did I say?" I said, "One Native American, his remains are interred on the earth." I said, "That don't make no cemetery." Yeah, last I checked, it takes more than one person randomly dying on his property and his remains to be left there and be covered by the earth to turn that into a cemetery.
Right. No, a cemetery is a plot of land that's been designated as a burial place, not somebody like what happened to him.
Exactly, and that holds true for every single culture under the sun. Mm-hmm. It's not exclusive to the United States, to Western civilization. A cemetery existed in Egypt. And it was designated as such. Exactly. And in some cases, like in the Navajo or the Anasazi, where they lived was in the side of mountains, and they had their burials in the side of mountains, which in the side of canyons. Hey, that granted, that makes sense. Furthermore, is when you watch further into the episode, Dre Fordham tells her story to him and says, a week after she was here, I think a week or so, she goes, she goes, about a week after I was at David's house, I'm at the supermarket, and I'm in the middle of the grocery aisle, and all of a sudden I feel my spirit or my soul being pulled out of my body. And I'm like, and I'm listening to her say it, I'm going, she just said a week after she's at my house, she had this experience, and she's blaming me and my house for this taking place 7 days after she was here for 10 minutes. I said, wow. That's not the capper. The capper is that he goes and he starts interviewing Barry Taft. And all of this, and I'm telling you people out there, go watch the show. Don't take my word for it. It's right there in the video on the show. What I'm saying to you, you can look at it and go, yeah, David's telling the truth. That's kind of cockeyed. Zach goes and talks to Barry and says to Barry, well, Barry, this Dre Fordham was at David's house, and the following day she was at the supermarket, and she felt this experience where her body and soul were being pulled out from one another. I said to my friends watching, I said, stop, rewind. What does Dre say? About a week after I'm at David Oman's house, I'm at the supermarket. I said, fast forward what Zach tells Barry. The following day after she was at David's house, and I said, okay, we have two. And then he's taking what Trey Fordham said, which didn't make sense in the first place, and then twisted it around and told Barry that her experience happened the following day after being here. And I said, it goes to show you what lengths this guy will go, and he has there are no ends to which he will go to create something that is flat out not what was said, to make it more sensational, to bring it to a place where it's like your heart's palpitating and you have other reasons. But the truth is, if somebody's saying lies about other people, fine. I can't control that. But when you do it about me, and then you put it in a freaking book, and then you put it on the sequel to the show, Aftershocks, and you go to these pandered, these prearranged shots of where you got me cast half in the darkness and half in the light with a real intense look in my face, and you cut to that after you make a statement, David's possessed. It's like, gee, Zach, your credibility went down the toilet with the book and with the 2 episodes you put me on. But really, your credibility has gone really way down after the fact that in every episode over the past 2 seasons that I've had, as I've heard from others that watch the show, you're getting possessed every gosh darn time you step into a place.
So let me ask you something, David. Do you think, and I know what you mean, I know exactly where you're coming from on that. Do you think then, because it almost sounds like what you're telling me, that it's almost incidental, that tragedy that happened, that murder, the Manson family, everything?
Yes. I don't say, no, time. But I can't, I want to take that back. I don't think that the tragedy is incidental.
No. I'm just saying.
But your listeners might believe that. What I'm saying to you is that what I've said before is, had the murders not taken place 150 feet down the driveway from my house, wouldn't affect this house in any way, shape, or form at all. As far as the paranormal activity that occurs here is concerned, it would be going on had that not happened there. If Sharon was still alive and Charles Manson and his family didn't kill Sharon 48 years ago, this place would still be crazy haunted.
Exactly.
Because, in fact, it is haunted, and it's not correct. I don't like using the word haunted because in modern contextual thought, haunted, creates an image of a place where somebody was killed or died or was murdered or some tragedy befell them. That could be no further from the truth in this case, where no one's died here that we physically know of, outside of what Lisa Williams claims. We don't know anything other than that. So if that is removed from the equation, back to what I was saying, we factually don't know if anybody ever died here because we don't. As far as this house is concerned and the existence of it, we know that no one has ever died here. That is a simple statement of fact. Prior to that, it was just the hillside. So I don't know anything of records of the area. I've never researched, in my research, I've never found any evidence of any tragedy occurring on this property, period, ever.
Right.
So what the house is it's a portal, a vortex. As Lisa Williams called it, it's a ghost flop house.
Boy.
Marianne Winkowski said, oh, honey, I can't do anything for your house. She said, and she's, again, the woman that's the show Ghost Whisperer is based upon. And she said to me, as we had a discussion at Universal's, at the Universal Hotel when she was in town for one of the episodes that she was there for to watch, I talked to her at length about it. She goes, your house is just a doorway to the other side. Spirits come in your house and leave and come and go. Some of them hang there for a longer period of time and then go. Some of them just come in and then just check it out and then go. Some come in with the people that walk into the house, she used to say. She said to me, she goes, the idea that spirits are jumping from one person to the other is kind of a fallacy. She goes, they don't. She goes, they're with that person for a reason, and that's who they're with. And I said, you mean the thing about hitchhiking ghosts? She goes, that's not exactly true. There's not a lot of that to go around. She goes, in some extreme cases there are those incidents, but for the most part they're pretty much with people that they're supposed to be with. And she goes, but when they come into the house, the individual comes in, the group of spirits around them can pop off and hit this environment. Like I used to say, like I said, you mean like like when you take your friends to the beach, well, cram into a car, you get to the beach, you all pop off on the beach and go your own separate ways. And she goes, exactly.
Okay, that makes
That's
sense.
life. And I said, what Barry said to me is that because this house has got such elevated EMF levels that the spirits can drive their energies or their engines, so to speak, off of the energies in the house. And I said, so it's kind of like a good analogy would be taking a reptile from a cold environment where it's sluggish, where its blood flow is in circulation is very, very mitigated, and taking it to a warm environment where it's deriving its blood will flow quicker and more freely because the atmosphere and the environment is such that it's deriving its energy from the environment. He goes, exactly. I said, that's the best analogy that I will use from now on about the spirits and the way it affects them when they come in the house.
So, David, if anybody wanted to find out anything, whether you're going to have anybody over or just to see what's happening, what's the best thing? To go to your website, to go to Facebook? What's
Well, I'd say you can go to the Oman House. That's TheOman house.com.
Okay.
To get information about the house. If any events are going to be happening, that's where I would be listing it. There's also contact information if people want to rent the house out for a private event or a private party or something like that. I mean, I do and have done that in the past type of thing. And of course, to see the video shot here, go to YouTube, to my channel first.
Okay,
YouTube.
I'll put a link to it.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to it in the credits of the show.
Exactly, YouTube.com, and then of course my Twitter account, _Oman1, and that's really about it. Like I said, I'm much more private and much more reserved. The only thing, like I said, I want to bring to the public is my own story. I'm going to write the book. I'm not done. I'm in the process of writing it because there's this one write a book. It's like, all right, fine. Because if anybody knows anything about writing a book, it is the most difficult. Correction. Writing a book about one's own life is a most difficult proposition.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
And
it is.
I've had so many experiences in this house. And so many countless of other experiences that other people have had here, that it's a good thing that in 2005 I started writing down a diary of incidents, of things that were taking place so I could review them later on going, that jogs me. I got the whole, there's they're the deep guy. Boom, I remember it all now. Because otherwise, there's literally over 1,001 experiences that have occurred here. The thing is like the book, and then the idea is that I want to do a show, not a series. I know we can't, because every time I've pitched the idea to do a series about this house, every single producer comes back to me with, no one's going to want to come back and see another second or third or fourth episode at your house. And I go, excuse me, they watched the gosh darn story of what's going on Oak Island. What the hell is the difference? They're on the frickin' island digging for a fucking lost treasure for the past 3 years, going back to a historical story that goes back hundreds of years, and they haven't discovered shit. So don't tell me that they're not going to want to come back to the same location day in and day out to watch an episode, a series about that episode and that location. You're quite wrong. As a medium. Because everybody who comes in has a different experience connected to them personally. Not to Sharon Tate, not to the shit that you think you're going to find. It comes into the story, revolves around their personal experiences here with their friends and relatives that have passed away. And they couldn't wrap their heads around it. I said, well, what about my story? Nobody wants to see a special. I said, no, but they want to see 6 episodes from 6 different series about my house, telling the wrong story. I said, yeah, that makes total sense. And you're trying to tell me that there haven't been multiple specials on Lizzie Borden's, on the Stanley House, on the what's her face, the place in San Diego, the
Winchester House,
the Winchester House as well, but the one in San Diego with the
Whaley,
the Whaley House, exactly. I said, you can't tell me that. I said, and I actually live here. I said, last I checked, what I can say safely against all of those other shows about those locations is not one single one of them has a resident that is the same resident that has been living in that location for 15 years straight, who hasn't run out of the house, who hasn't run in fear and terror claiming that there's blood pouring out of the walls like Amityville. I said, this is what I don't understand. You got 6 shows that have been out there about the house, and they've all been the highest rated episode to date for those series. And you're telling me that nobody's interested in my story, which is told from my perspective, which is the truth, which covers the whole entirety of the past 18, 19 years here, and a little of the history beforehand. And you don't think you think that you can do a special on a daguerreotype of Billy the Kid, when the daguerreotype itself is this big. Here's an idea. Here's a business card. Literally, it's a little bit bigger than a freaking business card. But they did a 3 1-hour special about the freaking daguerreotype with Billy the Kid and made that into a mountain and a half.
I've seen that show.
They did the same thing with What's-His-Face with D.B. Cooper jumping off of a plane and hijacking a plane and making off with $10,000 or $200,000 in currency and jumping from a plane and parachuting down. I mean, but those stories are things that people want to see. But here we have a subject that's been interested and intriguing the audience for the past decade that we know of.
Yes.
That's never been told accurately. That in every single one of the story-based shows, they've either pushed things together or they've made it look more. They've made it look, I should say, not hinky, but they've made it look more fake by the fact that they've shot in other locations to then say this is the reenactment in David's house. But here's the picture of David's house, and you look at them and you're like butting heads, like 2 male rams butting heads in rut because they don't work. The one house that they use for the reenactment is a 3-story up, where the house that I actually live in, which they cut away to, is 3 stories down. And they don't even look closely alike. The actors they used were actors that everybody looked great as the person they were responsible to be portraying, except for me. They got a guy with a receding hairline, looks like he's a stockbroker, about on his 15th year of being in the stock trade, who's a neurotic son of a bitch. And I'm thinking, that son of a bitch is playing me? I said, that's not even accurate. And like I said, they have to do what they have to do because they have a 1-hour time frame within which to frame this story. And because they don't care necessarily about the accuracy of my story, in effect, to making it feel or be real, they are in a position where they have 42 minutes to tell a story, and it's not the whole story. They've taken a sliver of my life in the story here and made it into the full episode, so they have to do things to sensationalize stuff. And I said, the fact is people ask me on radio shows what this and that, and they say, why didn't we see that in one of these TV shows? That's more interesting than the shit they put on the episode. And I go, I have a pretty good sense of feeling of the pulse of the audience, of what they want and what they don't want. And after being on the shows and seeing the responses and hearing from the audience's feedback and opinion and knowing what I got in my own library of materials captured here, I know for a fact I could give you guys a 3 1-hour special about the House of Hauntings that would guaranteed give you more paranormal evidence of activity in the 1 3-hour episode than in every single paranormal television show that's been on in the past 30 years and all their seasons running collected.
Well, I mean,
times 10. I mean, that's how much evidence I've accumulated that I want to put on the show and also put on the website for the show after I finish writing the book. Because once the book is out there, people are going to just read it and say, that's what I wanted to read. I want to read the real story from David, not what other people have done, because that's the opening to saying, all right, now David's got some credibility. Now the audience and the producers realize the audience is interested in this. Then I think that they would be interested in doing the special and telling the story vis-a-vis what is in the book, because it's chronological. It goes through the early parts of the Tonga tribesmen from 1769 to, it goes through lightly sprinkled history, because you need to know what was there before we were here.
Right. In other words, this is your experience, but not filtered through somebody else that wants to produce a certain end or a version.
Right. It's telling my story with the truth with the interest level of the audience at heart, with the intrigue and the whole, like I said, the whole story, showing pictures, still photographs of during the construction, which very
Okay.
few people have ever
You know
seen.
what? I then definitely you need to pursue that book writing. I know it's difficult, like you said, but you sounds like you have a good vision in mind of what you want once you finish the book and beyond it, which is definitely that's what you need. You need a vision, and you've got it. The only way you're on the right track because the only way you're going to be able to have that is doing exactly what you're saying. You're going to be in the driver's seat of the production.
Right. Well, I'll be there with them. I have no problem working with a production company. I just want to make sure that we adhere to a certain level of integrity in the production, that we are not following the footsteps of others that have gone. Famous because he was in the Earthen Ballroom in that 10-pound butcher block spun off the television set. And I took him down there a year later and interviewed him, and we had him do the walkthrough in that room, and he broke it down for us in detail what all was going on and explained to us what his mindset was, what he was thinking, what he was doing, because some of the people that watch the video don't understand what he was doing in the room, and he gets to lay it out from start to finish, the whole story of what took place on top of watching the video as well and breaking it down. To me, that works a lot better in a sales pitch and in a actually engaging your audience.
Oh, yeah, you're fading out on me. You're coming in. You're the it's becoming frozen, and the audio is starting to fade. It's starting to like you're frozen. Oh boy.
If that's the case, then it's a sign from the other side saying, you guys have spent a lot of time on the phone. Maybe this is it, and wrap it up. And they also don't like Zach Baggins, so what do you expect? that I guarantee you, if we change the subject and the conversation clears up,
everything.
What do you want? Do you want proof? All right, so let's talk about Sharon. Maybe we can talk about Sharon, and her untimely death, and the fact that people lay blame upon Jay Sebring dealing drugs as the reason why it was justifiable homicide, or the fact that people lay claim to the fact that they were supposed to be at Sharon's house for this party on August 8th. That was never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. I want to say is just one last thing, is that everybody lays claim, including the woman in the People magazine article a few years ago on the 45th anniversary, that she was supposed to be at Sharon's the night of the murder. Chuck Norris famously said, had Bruce Lee and I actually gotten up to the party like we were supposed to and weren't detained somewhere else, that night wouldn't have ended the way it would have ended a whole lot different than it did, in reality. And in reality, there was no party that night. That's a lie. It's a myth. And was there with her friends, Wojciech Frykowski and Abigail Fulcher, who were living there, because Roman
Polanski, because they were waiting for Roman Polanski to come back from Europe.
Well, because he was in New York working on something, and Sharon was 8 months pregnant. He said, look, while I'm in New York working, I want you guys to stay here at the house in case Sharon her water breaks and she has to be rushed to the hospital. I don't trust the ambulance is getting up here in time. So they were living there. Jay Sebring was Sharon's ex-fiancé, who lived about a mile up the street, up Benedict Canyon. And they were all good friends. Sharon and Jay and Roman were good friends. And, he was still very much good friends with Sharon, still loved Sharon. So he didn't have a problem with being there. They were all at dinner at the El Coyote. So those 4 people were the only 4 people connected to Sharon Tate that were ever going to be there that night.
Right.
There was no party. She's 8.5 months pregnant. What everyone who makes the claims about that they were going to be at the party seem to forget is that in so doing, it really destroys the character of Sharon Tate. Because what you're saying is, Sharon Tate, 8.5 months pregnant with her first child, is a callous, selfish, self-destructive individual and doesn't care about her baby, to the point where she's having people come over 2 weeks before she's expecting, and the drinking and they're partying, and she's cavorting with a bunch of people late into the night. That's not the case at all. She wasn't. There wasn't a party. Abigail and Wojciech were dressed Abigail was in her nightgown. Wojciech Frykowski was wearing his blue pajamas. Sharon was wearing a white nightgown. Jay was wearing the clothes he went to for dinner. And his striped leisure pants, and his shirt. I mean, and the only oddball was Stephen Parent, who was up there to see William Erickson, the
caretaker,
the caretaker of the house, of the property. So, you know, had left 5 minutes earlier, he would have survived.
Talk about bad timing.
Exactly. So, I mean, what people don't realize is that these stories are lies, and in the lies, it paints a picture that's very self-destructive towards Sharon's character and persona. And I find it to be insane that people would do that. But it's the old, I want the attachment to the connection to tragedy, so I could say I could have been there. In fact, there was no possibility that he was going to be there. Because as I said to a friend a few weeks ago, think of it. Think of the odds. What are the odds that 1,000 people were supposed to be at Sharon Tate's house or claimed to have been invited to party at Sharon Tate's house that night? What are the odds that 1,000 people out of 1,000 people would, under circumstances beyond control, not endeavor to make it up to the house that night?
But you know what? Because you know that the Manson family, it took them a while to realize they had a lot of wild theories going around because I believe that before they knew it was Manson, they had even looked at, you know, that Roman Polanski had done Rosemary's Baby, and that supposedly while he was filming it, he had gotten threats from people that were involved with that. So they were even thinking at one point that might be the tie-in as to who had done this. This was before they identified the Manson family as being the culprits.
I vividly recall it was anyone's guess who it was. They didn't know if it was hippies, they didn't know if it was a satanic cult. They didn't know. There were so many different theories in the newspapers. I look back and I read the headlines and I read some of the articles prior to the discovery, which in itself was a happenstance circumstance that almost never got covered because the Ronnie Howard, Susan Atkins' cellmate at Civil Brand, had told the sheriffs, the jailer, one of the jail patrol, the sheriff in the jail, what she said, what Susan Atkins had confided in her roommate Ronnie Howard, and it was the old story of telephone. 5 people lined up. Say a statement to person number 1. By the time it gets to person number 5, the statement doesn't resemble the initial statement made. The same thing with this. She said to her, she goes, she wanted to take, Susan Atkins confided in Ronnie Howard, said she wanted to take the baby out, but she didn't. And the fact that she didn't mention something about a rope thing around the neck of Jay Sebring over the rafters connecting to Sharon Tate's body was another thing. And it was another small detail that were not consistent. And the reason why they weren't consistent is because, as this is known now, somebody came back to the murder site after the murders were committed. And we know this because there's witness testimony that describes 2 men yelling and arguing at about 1:30, between 1:30 and 2 in the morning, on the morning of the 9th. And the crime scene disposition doesn't jive with the way Susan Atkins had described the crime scene disposition. Mm-hmm. Meaning that there wasn't any rope around Sharon and Jay's connected bodies over the rafters. There wasn't blood that only matched Sharon and Jay, a pool of blood that matched Sharon and Jay at the front door.
Okay.
There wasn't blood-stained evidence or blood trail going into the backyard on the grass in the lawn that only matched Sharon and Jay's blood.
Okay.
So somebody came there after the murders were performed or committed and tried to, as I later on gathered through supposition or through just whatever, I don't want to get into it, but I just came up with this, is that Manson and his cohort, a male cohort, came back to the crime scene at around 1:30 in the morning to examine the crime scene. In a sick Manson was like a director in a film. He wanted to see how his creation, what he had vision in his mind, how it was actually executed. And he wasn't happy.
Okay.
So he basically took Sharon Jay's body with his cohort to the front door, where they stopped to catch their breath, because dead bodies are like dead weight. They don't help with the movement. They're like bags of sand. So they stopped at the front door, and the blood dripped out and collected in a pool at the front door.
Okay.
Took the bodies outside into the backyard. Again, dropped with the blood, making sense at that point. Then they try to put Sharon Jay into a pseudo-sexual position. And hear me out.
Okay.
The theory behind this is very clear. They then came in the house because they couldn't do that with the bodies because the remorse had set in and bodies aren't like posable dolls, mannequins. They're not helpful in that regard. So he decided to then put the body, Sharon on the couch and then Jay on the floor, and take the rope and throw it over the rafter and then connect it to Sharon's head or body and then take the other end and connect it to Jay's body to make a figurative statement that it was Sebring's baby that Sharon was carrying, not Polanski's baby. And what's interesting is, and I've heard theories about this, that when people went back, look back at it and said, wait a second, Sharon's 8.5 months pregnant, go back 8.5 months. Where was Roman at this time? Not in L.A., not anywhere near Sharon. And again, this is not what I'm just reiterating what I've heard in the theories. They said that there's no way that Sharon and Roman could have conceived that child if she's 8.5 months pregnant then, and you backtrack to then, he's nowhere around. And I said, well, that now makes sense. It answers every single question that I had as to why there's blood at the front door. Why is there blood stained evidence trailing into the backyard on the lawn? Okay. Why is there a rope connecting the two bodies? Because if you go to the rope and you work backwards saying that's what the rope is there to make the figurative statement of, then you work backwards and you come back to what I just said, the only conclusion you have that fits the factual consistent, that's factually consistent with the evidence that is there that was found at the crime scene at the time.
Well, I mean, I know that there was a lot of stuff that went on there that you almost wish that they had the forensic that we have now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's not the case. But anyway, David, thank you so much for the time that you spent. You've been wonderful. I look forward to the book. I look forward to whatever it is that you're going to produce, because I know that it's going to be out there.
Well, it'll be out there, but it'll be out there in one sense of the word, in the sense that it'll be something that has never been done like this before, but it'll be in there in the fact that it'll be widely appreciated and shared with an audience that'll get more out of it than most of the that's been out there produced on television. I thank you, and I appreciate your sentiments and your words and your words of endorsement and words of encouragement, because
absolutely.
That really, honestly, that's the fuel that kind of, I need a spark, and that's the spark that encourages me that I'm on the right path and I have to continue forging with this book and make this happen. Because people say to me, it's like, I forget it. No one gives a damn about history. It's like, no, really, it doesn't. There's a lot of people that are intrigued by it, and you have a very interesting, insightful, open perspective about it. That very few people
I will stay
have.
on top of what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you produce.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And once the book is done, I'll be happy to get you a copy of it, get your insights and your feedback, and be happy to come back on and talk about the book and discuss things in a different light. Once the book is done, I'm sure I'll have a lot more to discuss.
Absolutely. Have a good night. Take care. It was great talking to you.
You do the same. Great talking to you too, Marlene.
Bye-bye. So, I'm sorry if it's, I might even break up this interview into 2 parts because it was such a long interview, but it was so interesting. Okay, because, when I asked David to do the interview, I didn't realize that, that all this was going on behind the background because, of course, you're not privy to this, all we see is the shows, what's produced, and you never know what's going on behind the scenes. So, I thought it was really interesting because it opens up this whole view of first of all, what was really going on at his house, the manifestations, the people that were involved there, because you could tell there's a big difference between what you see on the programs and reality. Big difference. So I think, I don't know, when I edit this video, I'll consider if I'm going to divide it into two parts. And it'll be moot by the time you see me seeing this, because by then I will have made a decision on it. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel, like this video. Okay, catch me on Facebook and on Twitter. I live stream there. I think, you know what? I love this interview, and I'm going to tell you why. Because, you know, besides the fact that we were talking about somebody that's lived in a house for 15 years, that's had all this, you know, anomalies and things that have actually been captured. You hear about, you know, and I've spoken to, you know, other people involved in the paranormal that, you know, that sometimes they feel that some of these shows that have to do the paranormal, it's been like a double-edged sword. You know, it's made paranormal more mainstream, more acceptable, not as much stigma where you get those looks. But at the same time, it's skewed the reality of what working with the paranormal truly is. Okay, and when you hear his description of what went on behind the scenes, you kind of, like I said, I've talked about this in other shows with other people involved in the paranormal, where they're investigators or authors, where they kind of like think, you know what, they're not doing people who are truly into this field any favors, because other people out there, just the perception they get about either what, you know, supernatural manifestations have to do, people that work in this field, people that live in houses like this, it's like, it's kind of off kilter as to what the reality is. Yes, you're always going to have what we call the outliers, which are cases that, that they're the extremes. Okay, extremes in either hauntings, the way it's affected a person. Yeah. But like, again, those are outliers. That's not the norm. That's not the norm for either the investigators, researchers, or people that experience it. You know, not everybody's extreme case, but yeah, as I can't wait to see what he produces, because I'm sure for 15 years he's got a lot to bring to the table as far as what it's like to live in a house. Again, whether it's because it's the anomalies are created by the geomagnetic, whatever is going on there in that piece of land. And like I was trying, you know, I guess that because there was this very terrible, tragic murder, okay, that happened, maybe a few hundred feet from its house, was just incidental. It was going to happen anyway. Or did in some way that cause it? Because from what I understand, the reason supposedly what Charles Manson had picked this particular house was because apparently there was a music producer who used to live there before, who he had some type of problem with, I guess promised him either some type of opportunity, some type of things. So he was under the impression that this music producer still lived in this house, and that's why he picked this house, and they ended up murdering anybody. I don't know how accurate that is, because sometimes there's different versions of things that go on, and who knows at this point. But that sounds logical. But then again, you ask yourself, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the anomaly of the land? Did that cause that tragedy to happen the way it did? Or it has nothing to do with it? Or is it the anomalies because of what's there? And then you have this horrible tragedy, okay, which was the imprint that it caused, coupled with the anomalies. Do we have spirits of people that, for some reason, maybe they're waiting for something, Maybe not necessarily that they're tied there. They just choose to be there. I mean, it could be a whole set of things. Like he said, and I've made this point before in other shows, there's a lot of things of history that happens in places which are never recorded. Whether it's the newspaper or historian or anything like that. And what he was describing when he says that Lisa Williams, the medium, is describing how this Native American, his horse and him go off, basically off the hill and end up dead. That happens a lot. We look at that horrific murder as the source of the hauntings, and they could be, or not, or partially, but a bunch of other things could have happened there long before there were any houses there, a paved road. You could have had a massacre there. You could have had people that were killed. You name it. Bodies could have been dumped. As a matter of fact, I believe in 2016, there was a story that came out how they had found a female body that had been stabbed 150 times. And this happened very, very close to where these murders took place. And they even questioned Charles Manson about it. Apparently he didn't cooperate, I guess, because they were looking at maybe he killed somebody else. This lady was unidentified, I believe, since 1969 till 2016. And finally, somebody that knew her, I guess they had put her picture in a database of Jane Doe's, said, wait a minute, that looks like so-and-so many, many, many years before. Turns out this was a Canadian girl, very young Canadian girl, had come over to, I think, see some friends here in California, decided to stay. Somebody ended up killing her. But to this day, it's unsolved. Finally, she was identified. But my point being that happens more often than people think. Sometimes the bodies are found, sometimes they're not. In this case, yeah, they identified her, but as far as the murderer, that still remains a big question mark. So yes, absolutely. I mean, a lot could happen as far as what is either the origins of the haunting, okay, little dog, stop it, or if not the catalyst, the accelerators that take this from being something that goes, oh, dog, stop, unperceived, till you have then what you see now going on in the Oman House. So again, I'm going to put links to the credits as to if you want to go to a site, if you want to get more information about if he's going to have any tours or book special events, etc. So guys, take care. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, like the video. Take care. Thanks for viewing.